Chapter 387. No. The humans of the northern wilderness region must be annihilated. Spirit Sovereign Yen replied forcefully. He could take Zhou Xuanji in, but he could not allow Zhou Xuanji to make any requests. If Zhou Xuanji was unwilling, then he could kill Zhou Xuanji with a justifiable reason. Devil Emperor Dugu shook his head and said, "No race is always the main character of the world. In other mortal realms, the demons might be in charge, and the demons might be in charge. Why be so stubborn? You will ascend sooner or later to pursue a higher great Tao." He watched Zhou Xuanji's rise. In his heart, Zhou Xuanji was like his junior or disciple. He really did not want this brat to die here. Zhou Xuanji took out the sun-devouring Tiango sword and True Lord Xianqing sword and said, "If so, then let's fight. I also want to see how powerful the previous powerful cultivators are." Devil Emperor Dugu shook his head and did not speak anymore. He closed his eyes and continued his cultivation. Spirit Sovereign Yen burst out in laughter. His laughter was filled with disdain. This brat is so arrogant. But he could understand. A genius who had never tasted defeat always thought that he was the most powerful and looked down on his seniors. The 17 heavenly law puppets leaped up and charged toward Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji focused his eyes and charged at them with his dual sword wills. His body was like a sharp sword, flashing with a cold light. In the blink of an eye, he was fighting with the 17 heavenly law puppets. He danced with both swords at extreme speed. But even so, he was at a disadvantage. Wang Ho did not have any enchanted artifacts but only his fists and legs. His attacks were powerful and domineering. Zhou Xuanji could hardly block each of his punches and kicks. Lu Wuji used his palms as weapons. Bolts of lightning coiled around him and tore apart the sword Qi with great power. The other 15 heavenly law puppets were not weak either. Each had their own abilities. Some wielded swords, some wielded sabers, some wielded spears like dragons, and some swung their horsetail whisks with boundless magic energy. Their attacks were extremely ferocious. No matter how exquisite Zhou Xuanji's sword techniques were, he could not block them. Seeing this, Spirit Sovereign Yen laughed even more savagely. Biyao Yisan sighed. "It's over. No one can save this emperor." At this moment, Zhou Xuanji activated the divine energy of the sun-devouring Tiango sword and slashed with all his might. Marquis, Lu Wuji, and the other heavenly law puppets quickly dodged, but one heavenly law puppet was too slow and turned into ashes right away. Spirit Sovereign Yen stopped laughing and started to watch the battle seriously. Biyao Yisan's eyes lit up, and anticipation filled his heart. With the sword soul, Zhou Xuanji regained the upper hand. He didn't borrow the power of heaven and earth. He wanted to see how strong he was. Apart from Marquis and Lu Wuji, everyone else's strength was average. At most, they were a bit stronger than Shi Shenzong. Of course, Shi Shenzong was not weak. If it was one-on-one, he was confident that he could defeat all the other puppets except for Lu Wuji and Marquis. Lu Wuji was a seventh tribulation scattered immortal, and so was Marquis. However, their divine powers were very powerful. Facing Zhou Xuanji's attacks, they could always dodge or use some kind of divine ability to dissipate his sword Qi. Previously, Lu Wuji only had the cultivation of his main body, and his power was not even 1/10 of the main body's. The 9 hell flame extinction that he had inherited was quite powerful, so Zhou Xuanji was wary of Lu Wuji opening the yin-yang boundary again. There was a loud bang. A bolt of lightning descended and turned into a heavenly law puppet. Without hesitation, it charged toward Zhou Xuanji. This scene made Zhou Xuanji frown. He suddenly remembered that his target was Spirit Sovereign Yen and not these heavenly law puppets. Now, 18 heavenly law puppets had appeared. He had destroyed one, and the other 17 were enough for him to become a great emperor. After the thought, he borrowed the power of heaven and earth, and his aura changed suddenly. The purple Tai Chi diagram appeared on his forehead. He activated world reincarnation, and all the heavenly law puppets were pushed back by his magic energy. Taking this opportunity, Zhou Xuanji came up to Spirit Sovereign Yen with one step. He activated the sky-dominating divine sword soul, and a sword light flashed. Spirit Sovereign Yen dodged in fear, but his left shoulder and arm were still sliced off. He quickly retreated, distancing himself from Zhou Xuanji. The other 17 heavenly law puppets came over and blocked Zhou Xuanji with all their divine abilities. This guy is a ninth tribulation scattered immortal. Zhou Xuanji was shocked in his heart. Spirit Sovereign Yen was much more powerful than Yang Lu. Their reaction speed was worlds apart. However, it was impossible for someone to surpass Great Tribulation scattered immortal in the mortal world. He could only be a ninth tribulation scattered immortal. Spirit Sovereign Yen roared furiously, "Bastard! You dare to injure me? I will make you beg for your death." After he spoke, the rainbow radiance on his body soared into the clouds, and his original form was revealed. His left shoulder was covered in blood, and he had lost his left arm. His face was hideous, and he wanted to tear Zhou Xuanji into pieces. Boom! 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 9 bolts of lightning struck down and turned into 9 heavenly law puppets. All of them were powerful swordsmen. Some held 2 swords, some held a broadsword, and some held a long sword that was curved like a snake. Seeing them, Zhou Xuanji felt unwell. He recognized the Hegemon Sword Emperor and Sky-Sundering Sword Emperor Wang Xiaofei at first glance. He had seen the 2 Sword Emperors in the Inheritance Space, and he had a deep memory of them. 9 Emperors of the Sword's Way. The 9 heavenly law puppets charged toward Zhou Xuanji and besieged him together with the other 17 heavenly law puppets. Seeing that the situation was not good, Zhou Xuanji activated the Emperor's Way Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha. The majestic Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha rose from the ground and blasted the 26 heavenly law puppets away with the power of heaven and earth and world reincarnation. The Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha, which was 2,000 meters tall, pierced through the clouds like a holy Buddha with divine might. Biyao Isin was speechless and mumbled, "This brat's talent is too outrageous." Devil Emperor Dugu opened his eyes and frowned. He actually mastered the overlord of the realm. Devil Emperor Dugu sighed. His emotions were complicated. He liked Zhou Xuanji more like this, but he had no choice but to watch from the sidelines. The Hegemon Sword Emperor held his sword with both hands and slashed at the Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha furiously. A sword chi that was thousands of meters long clashed with the Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha, but it was a pity that it could not shake the Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha. Zhou Xuanji fused into the Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha's body. He stretched out 1,000 arms, each holding a golden sword, and slashed furiously. Facing so many seniors who were qualified to be great emperors, Zhou Xuanji felt proud. Very good. Today, he was going to challenge the most powerful cultivator in history to prove that he was the most powerful cultivator in history. Boom! The ground sank, and billowing dust billowed. Devil Emperor Dugu and Spirit Sovereign Yen dodged quickly. Damn you! This emperor is here too. Biyao Isin cursed as he was covered in dust. Following this, the ground caved in, and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. The 26 Heavens Path puppets showed no fear and continued to attack the Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha. Although the Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha had 1,000 swords, it was unable to keep up with the speed of these experts. It was like an elephant swatting at a fly. If not for the world's power, Zhou Xuanji would have been torn to shreds. He did not panic, and his gaze locked onto Spirit Sovereign Yen. Spirit Sovereign Yen landed on the barren land 10,000 meters away, glaring at him fiercely. The Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha suddenly disappeared, and Zhou Xuanji came before Spirit Sovereign Yen in a single step. He held the sun-devouring Tiango sword in his right hand and furiously slashed out. Boom! A beam of light burst out from the ground and caught the sun-devouring Tiango sword with one hand. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow. Who was this? Calm. Wonderful bookstore calm. Chapter 388. The heavenly law puppet in front of Zhou Xuanji was muscular and domineering. It had 4 arms and grabbed Zhou Xuanji's sword with one hand while punching his chest with both fists, sending him flying away. He quickly stabilized himself in the air and stared coldly at the heavenly Tao puppet. Spirit Sovereign Yen laughed condescendingly. Zhou Xuanji, this is the first heavenly law puppet I created. He has been hiding underground just in case. Do you know who he is? There's no way you can defeat him. Zhou Xuanji took out all of the legendary swords above gold grade and had them float around him, pointing them at Spirit Sovereign Yen. Who? He asked indifferently. No matter who it was, it didn't matter. They were all fakes. This is War God Xiling. I don't need to explain his background, do I? Spirit Sovereign Yen smiled proudly. When he mentioned this name, his tone became slightly fanatical. The war god Xiling was an ancient existence in the legends. Legend had it that he was the one who taught Emperor Xia divine abilities, allowing him to lead the human race to dominate the northern wilderness region. He ascended before Emperor Xia ascended to the top. Of course, Zhou Xuanji had heard of this name before. The teacher of the human sovereign was incredibly famous, and the 9 emperors of the Way of the Sword could not compare to him. He wasn't afraid of war god Xiling, and he attacked Spirit Sovereign Yen again. The other heavenly law puppets charged over again and attacked him from all sides. Each heavenly law puppet was more powerful than a third tribulation scattered immortal. They did not have intelligence and did not know fear, which made Zhou Xuanji very difficult to deal with. This was especially true for war god Xiling. This guy was clearly more powerful than Wang Ho and Lu Wuji, and the power contained in his 4 arms was terrifying. He even suspected that this guy could lift Skyfall. Even with the power of heaven and earth in his body, he could not get close to Spirit Sovereign Yen. Devil Emperor Dugu sighed. The fact that Zhou Xuanji could fight to such a degree already shocked him. If it were him, he wouldn't be able to stop so many generations of experts. The 9 emperors of the Way of the Sword. The 9 types of sword Daos had endless transformations and were extremely domineering. The noble fist could shake mountains and rivers. Lu Wuji possessed remarkable abilities and could turn the rotten into the miraculous. The war god Xiling was even more awe-inspiring and invincible. Apart from this, there were still so many experts who had the potential to become great emperors. Zhou Xuanji had no chance of victory. Zhou Xuanji, do you feel powerless? Spirit Sovereign Yen laughed maniacally and continued to summon heavenly law puppets. I admit that you are indeed very strong. Your talent is greater than my son's. Unfortunately, you don't have a brain and can't tell the correct path. Death cannot wipe out your crimes. Don't worry, I will give you a chance to reincarnate. Be a good mortal in your next life. Drift and sink in the human world, and don't fight with the gods. His voice reverberated throughout heaven and earth, drowning out the rumbling of thunder and the wailing of ghosts and gods. Boom! Another heavenly law puppet descended. As the powerful light dissipated, he charged toward Zhou Xuanji straightaway. Zhou Xuanji controlled dozens of legendary swords to fight, and even though he was surrounded, he was not at a disadvantage. It was just that he was unable to come into contact with Spirit Sovereign Yen. At this moment, he was like an ancient war god, insufferably arrogant. His aura was so strong that he was worthy of being called the Sword Emperor. Spirit Sovereign Yen suddenly thought of something, and a strange smile appeared on his face. He raised his left hand and waved it towards the sky. In an instant, a gigantic illusion appeared in the sky above the northern wilderness region. It was the scene of the heavenly law puppets surrounding Zhou Xuanji. With his cultivation, he naturally could not do such a thing. But now that he was connected to the heavenly law, he was the heavens. Look, this is the top cultivator of the northern wilderness region. He's powerful indeed. He's fighting war god Xiling, Lu Wuji, Wang Ho, the 9 emperors of the Sword's Way, and so on. His opponents are all powerful cultivators who are qualified to become great emperors in each era. It's a pity that no matter how devilish his talent is, he can't defend against the joint attacks of so many powerful cultivators. How long do you think he can last? Spirit Sovereign Yan's voice resounded across the entire northern wilderness region. He was not trying to boost Zhou Xuanji's reputation but to make everyone despair. To him, Zhou Xuanji was going to die without a doubt, so why not shock the world before his death? All humans, demons, and ghosts looked up. No one cried out in shock. Everyone was silent. The battle was so intense that it dazzled everyone's eyes. Everyone could sense that person's anxiety and danger. If Zhou Xuanji was a little slower, he would have died without a doubt. Skyfall. All the disciples looked up at the sky and clenched their fists. They were furious and expectant. They were furious for Spirit Sovereign Yan and expectant for Zhou Xuanji. On the top of the mountain, Jiang Shui held Zhou Xiaoshuan's hand tightly. Both mother and daughter's eyes were red, and they did not even dare to breathe loudly. The others' expressions were also unsightly. Xiao Jinghong and Zhao Zongjin's bodies trembled. They could not hold back their anger. Zhou Xuanji displayed the demeanor of a sword emperor to the world. Everyone fought against him, but he was incredibly domineering. He fought against 28 alone, and the ground crumbled. Lightning interweaved, and it was as though the end of the world had arrived. At this moment, he could no longer care about Spirit Sovereign Yan's actions. The enemy's attack gave him no time to think about anything else. Hunyuan Royal City. Yang Di stood in front of the palace and looked up at the sky. His brows were tightly furrowed. He did not rejoice in Zhou Xuanji's misfortune but felt indignant. He's already so powerful, he mumbled to himself, feeling very sullen. All along, he had thought that he was more powerful than Zhou Xuanji. After all, they had never fought before. But looking at Zhou Xuanji's performance, he felt helpless. If it were him, he would not even last 10 rounds. Even he was shocked, let alone the rest of the world. Everyone was silent. This battle was so tragic and shocking in their eyes. They could only pray for Zhou Xuanji. The demons were silent too, but they did not despair. They could only rise up after the human race was destroyed. But, the current Sword Emperor was really powerful. He was almost invincible. On a tall mountain. The man in the woven rush raincoat stood on the summit. Mist shrouded him, and an illusion was reflected in the sky. Witnessing Zhou Xuanji's battle, he was speechless for a long time. A long while later. So, I was wrong. He sighed, and his tone was filled with desolation. Compared to Zhou Xuanji, the Yang Di he chose was still a hermit and lacked the charisma of a human leader. If he knew that Zhou Xuanji was so devilishly talented, he would have changed his choice. But there were no ifs. At this rate, Zhou Xuanji would surely die. More and more heavenly law puppets appeared. 30. 35. 40. Zhou Xuanji was at a complete disadvantage. Even with the Tianxia map providing him with endless magic energy and the world's power to support him, he could not withstand so many powerful cultivators. Spirit Sovereign Yan did not mock Zhou Xuanji anymore. He was silent, as though he was convinced by Zhou Xuanji's willpower. Devil Emperor Dugu levitated in the sky with a deep frown. His eyes sparkled, and no one knew what he was thinking. Zhou Xuanji, who was at the end of his tether, was still fighting. All sorts of sword techniques and sword souls appeared. Even though he was injured, he did not hesitate to attack. "Brat, you are going to die." Emperor Zhao's voice came into Zhou Xuanji's ears. The ancient god's sword was fighting, so the 9 souls could communicate with him. Zhou Xuanji ignored him. His eyes were cold as he focused on the battle. He knew that if this continued, he would surely lose. But now, he had no way out. Even if he wanted to escape, the 40 heavenly law puppets would not give him the chance. Calm. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 389. I didn't expect the heavenly path stone to have such a use. Unfortunately, no one in the mortal world can win. Lu Wuji's voice sounded in Zhou Xuanji's mind, filled with helplessness. If Zhou Xuanji died, they would not be able to live either. However, death was not scary to them. Their current state could be said to be worse than death. If they didn't have their own obsessions, how could they have become the sword souls of the ancient god sword? Zhou Xuanji continuously switched between world reincarnation and world internalization. His hands and the dozens of legendary swords did not stop either. If he stopped for even a tenth of a second, the price would be death. War god Xiling descended from the sky and smashed his leg towards Zhou Xuanji. The thunderclap sword blocked his leg, but it was pressed down and landed on Zhou Xuanji's shoulder. The powerful force bent Zhou Xuanji's legs, and he almost fell. With a sway of his body, he turned into a silver sword and charged toward war god Xiling. This scene caused an uproar throughout the world. Sword Emperor sword transformation. This was especially so for the sword cultivators. They all knew that Zhou Xuanji had said something famous before. The man was the sword, and the sword was the man. In the past, they had thought that it was the union of the heart and the sword. Who would have thought that humans could also become swords? Do your best, sword the arch. Kill them all. Where is this place? We have to go and support the sword sovereign. The human race can't be slaves, and we can't let the sword emperor fight alone. The sword emperor is mighty. The entire human race started to shout, cheering for Zhou Xuanji, even though Zhou Xuanji could not hear them. All of the disciples wanted to go and support Zhou Xuanji, but Daoya old man and the others stopped them. With their strength, it would be useless even if they rushed over. On top of the mountain, Daoya old man suddenly took a step forward, turned around, and said to the crowd, "Look after Emperor Sword Court. Don't let the disciples leave. I'll go to a secluded place to cast a spell and increase fate for Xuanji." The crowd did not suspect him and did not stop him. The other side. Zhou Xuanji, who had turned into a silver sword, wanted to chase after Spirit Sovereign Yan, but the heavenly law puppets obstructed him in every way possible, making it impossible for him to get close to Spirit Sovereign Yan. Even if he swung his sword from afar, his sword chi would still be blocked by the heavenly law puppets. Damn it, is it really impossible? Zhou Xuanji returned to his human form and gnashed his teeth. He could not die. He had too many ties, so how could he die here? This is the general trend. How can a man's life fight against the heavens? What an interesting method. Sigh, I'm really going to die here. You still want to revive? What a pity, kid. We'll accompany you in death. Don't be afraid. To be killed by a minion, I can't accept this. The souls continuously spoke in Zhou Xuanji's ears, as if they were saying their last words. Zhou Xuanji's heart sank. You still have hope. A violent cry came and woke Zhou Xuanji up. The speaker was none other than Emperor Hanlin. Don't think about killing that bug called Spirit Sovereign Yan. Hurry up and kill the 9 great emperor candidates, then use the celestial devil rebirth technique to be reborn. Once you're reborn, you'll become a great emperor right away and make a comeback, dominating the past and present. Emperor Hanlin said in a low voice. His tone was filled with dominance. His words shocked the other souls, and they all asked what the celestial devil rebirth technique was. Zhou Xuanji was also quite shocked. How did Emperor Hanlin know that he cultivated the celestial devil rebirth technique? He didn't have time to think too much. He found a target and madly attacked it. When the target was a heavenly law puppet, everything was easy. War god Xiling, Marquis, the 9 emperors of the Sword's Way, and Lu Wuji were all very powerful. They had all become great emperors before they ascended after all, and Zhou Xuanji could not do anything to them. However, the other great emperor candidates were nothing to him. Soon, he had killed 5 great emperor candidates. At this moment, he was determined to die. The more he killed, the more he would earn. The more he killed, the more he would earn. Seeing that Zhou Xuanji had changed his target, Spirit Sovereign Yan shook his head and cried out, "It's useless. Since ancient times, how many geniuses have there been? How can you kill them all?" Boom! Another heavenly law puppet descended with a powerful aura that surpassed a fifth tribulation scattered immortal. Zhou Xuanji focused on fighting. The sixth. The seventh. The eighth. Including the battle at the beginning, he had already killed 9 great emperor candidates. The frenzied battle consumed a lot of energy, and the Tianxia map's supply of magic energy began to decrease. Soon, he reached the 10th great emperor candidate. He did not stop. He was going to die anyway, so he was going to kill with all his might. The more he killed, the more powerful he would be after becoming a great emperor. Biyao Yisan climbed up from the rubble. He coughed a few times, and his face was covered in dust. He looked up and saw that Zhou Xuanji was still fighting, which made him feel admiration for him. This boy was born in the wrong era, he sighed. If Zhou Xuanji had been 10,000 years earlier, he might have already ascended to the upper realm and become a mighty figure. This was fate. The more devilishly talented someone was, the more difficult their fate would be. Devil Emperor Dugu suddenly appeared beside Spirit Sovereign Yan and said, "You really can't spare his life?" Spirit Sovereign Yan was inwardly shocked. Such incredible speed. Hadn't this fellow just been reborn? He said in a low voice, "It's not that I don't want to give him a chance. You saw it yourself." He had already allowed the entire world to watch the battle. If he spared Zhou Xuanji, wouldn't he be giving the human race hope? Zhou Xuanji had to die. Devil Emperor Dugu's face was dark, and he frowned deeply. Spirit Sovereign Yan could not help but feel wary. At this moment, Zhou Xuanji began to show signs of fatigue. The 9 emperors of the Way of the Sword quickly charged at him, and in an instant, dozens of sword wounds appeared on his body. Even his Trisun Flame Chi robe became tattered. As expected of the 9 emperors of the Way of the Sword. Zhou Xuanji sighed in his heart. He knew that he was at the end of his rope. However, he did not stop. He continued to kill enemies. When he reached the 18th Quasi-Emperor, he finally could not hold on any longer and was punched through the abdomen by War God Xiling, causing blood to splatter across the sky. He suddenly raised his head and let out an angry roar. All the divine swords disappeared, and a black shadow flew out from his body. It rushed into the clouds at an extremely fast speed and disappeared. Spirit Sovereign Yan frowned slightly, but didn't say anything. Devil Emperor Dugu was the same. They did not sense the aura of the primordial spirit, so they did not think too much about it. Zhou Xuanji's vitality had yet to dissipate completely. He turned to look at Spirit Sovereign Yan with an ice-cold gaze, and said, "Heavenly law reincarnation, those who are unjust, will bring about their own destruction." As soon as he finished speaking, his life force was severed. The world was silent. Jiang Shui fainted on the spot. Zhou Shaoxian hugged her and burst into tears. The eyes of Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Zongjian, Beishao Wangjian, Huang Lianxin, Han Shenbua, Chongming Demon Monarch, Lin Chang'e, and the rest were all red. They were filled with rage and sorrow, and were on the verge of losing their minds. Seeing Zhou Xuanji die, the demons did not feel happy. Even someone as powerful as Zhou Xuanji could not stop Spirit Sovereign Yan. Even though the demons were the main characters of the world, they were still puppets. They would still become Spirit Sovereign Yan's slaves. AI. Biyao Yisan felt incredibly stifled, and all the words he wanted to say turned into a sigh. War God Xiling carried Zhou Xuanji's corpse and came before Spirit Sovereign Yan. He examined it, and only after confirming that Zhou Xuanji had died did he feel at ease. However, what was strange was that Zhou Xuanji's soul had already dissipated, leaving behind only a trace of his remnant soul. He did not even have any memories. Calm. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 390. The top cultivator in the northern wilderness region, Zhou Xuanji, is dead. From today onwards, it will be the era of saints, and I will be the ruler of the mortal realm." Spirit Sovereign Yan's voice rang out in a domineering manner, as if a god was giving orders. The human race was furious, and all the cities were in an uproar. "Damn it! Even the Sword Emperor is dead. Is there no one who can defeat him? He's from the upper realm, an immortal god. How can we possibly defeat him? The human race has perished. The heavenly Tao is unfair. Why is it treating us like this?" Despair and fear spread among the human race. For a moment, all human dynasties and dynasties were in chaos. In the face of death, there would always be people who would erupt with their inner evil desires. Sometimes, humans were even scarier than demons. Especially when hope is lost. Juadi Cliff. Spirit Sovereign Yen continued to create heavenly law puppets. Devil Emperor Dugu had already buried Zhou Xuanji's corpse, and a tombstone was erected. Biyao Isin stood beside him and did not say anything for a long time. Both of them had once been invincible, and now their feelings were extremely complicated. Even they themselves couldn't explain it clearly. Devil Emperor Dugu turned around and asked Spirit Sovereign Yen, "What do you plan to do next?" Spirit Sovereign Yen said with a cold smile, "I'll kill those heavenly guards first, then slaughter the human race. In order to find my son, I'll slaughter a dynasty every year. What do you think?" Now that Zhou Xuanji was dead, no one in the northern wilderness region could threaten him. After that, he would be separated from the heavenly palace, so he could cultivate without worry. As for the main character of the northern wilderness region, it was not important. As long as it wasn't a human. Devil Emperor Dugu shook his head. He leaped into the air and left swiftly. Spirit Sovereign Yen laughed loudly, not stopping them. The northern wilderness region already belonged to him, so it didn't matter where Devil Emperor Dugu went. He believed that Devil Emperor Dugu wouldn't dare to ascend, and was only thinking of ways to recover his cultivation. He turned to look at the heavenly law puppets in front of him. He revealed a maniacal smile and muttered, "Not enough. It's not enough. The more heavenly law army he had, the better. It would be best if it was enough to topple the heavenly palace." On the other side, Biyao Isin prepared to sneak away. "Great Emperor Heartless, do you want to know why he told you to reincarnate?" Spirit Sovereign Yan's voice traveled into his ears, causing his body to freeze, and he stopped in his tracks. In a small town in the Ba Han dynasty, a streak of black light descended from the sky and landed in a courtyard. The black light dissipated and a naked baby appeared on the ground. His limbs were curled up and he was sleeping peacefully. The sky was about to turn dark. A man in a plain robe walked in. He was stunned when he saw the baby. He instinctively drew his sword and looked around vigilantly. The courtyard was not big, and he lived alone. How could there be a baby here? He carefully approached the baby. When he saw the baby lying naked on the cold ground, his heart softened and he picked it up. The humans are all pitiful in the apocalypse. The man sighed. His face was filled with worry as he carried the baby into the house. The next morning, the infant suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were pure, and there was a trace of killing intent in their depths. He was the reborn Zhou Xuanji. The memories gradually became clear in his mind. At this moment, he was lying on the bed, covered with a blanket, and the room was filled with the fragrance of sandalwood. "Sword Spirit?" he called softly in his heart. "Sword Master, what can I do for you?" The Sword Spirit's voice rang out, making him heave a sigh of relief. He turned around and saw that there was no one else in the house. His divine telekinesis was still there, and as it swept across the area, the entire town was within his sight. There was no one in the courtyard either. As such, he took out all of his legendary swords one by one. After making sure that none of them were missing, he felt at ease. With the Celestial Devil rebirth technique, each rebirth was not a new beginning. His soul power would be preserved, and his cultivation would recover in a short period of time. Otherwise, How could Xian Xianghua and the ancient Diablo rule over the world? He suddenly noticed that there were 18 black tattoos on his right arm, which were as thin as a strand of hair. As he looked at them, he somehow understood their meaning. Heavenly Law Mark. It was formed from the fate of a great emperor candidate. With 10 tattoos, he could become a great emperor. Zhou Xuanji could not become a great emperor for now. His body was not fully grown yet, so he needed time. With the celestial devil rebirth technique's dominance, he would grow up in less than 10 years. He was not afraid that Jiang Shui would take things too hard. With Xian Xianghua around, she would surely teach her the celestial devil rebirth technique. Spirit Sovereign Yen, wait a few more years. I will definitely take your head. Zhou Xuanji deeply breathed in and closed his eyes as he sensed the power of the heavens and earth. With the help of the heavens and earth, he would grow even faster. At least, he would grow faster than Xian Xianghua. After a while, he heard footsteps. The man who had saved him quickly walked in. Phew, luckily you didn't wake up. Because of you, I came back early. Do you know how many spirit pills I lost? The man muttered to himself as he took out a porcelain bottle that contained milk. He planned to feed Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji did not open his eyes, but he could sense it through his divine sense. He immediately felt a chill. Just as he was about to speak, another person rushed in. It was a woman. Pa. The woman slapped the man and said coldly, Shangguan Jusu, I misjudged you. I never thought that you would give up on yourself. You're not a man. The man called Shangguan Jusu was furious. What did I do? Didn't I just come back early from the lecture hall? He said in a low voice, a sorrowful look in his eyes. The woman in front of him wore a red dress and had a pretty face. She gave off a cold and aloof aura, giving her an icy beauty. The woman in the red dress looked at him and said, You no longer have the talent you had back then, you should cherish this opportunity to cultivate. Did you know that Immortal Master Chen originally wanted to expel you, but my father went to plead for you, giving you the opportunity to stay? Shangguan Jusu's pride was hurt, so he started to argue with the woman in the red dress. Zhou Xuanji listened the entire time and quickly understood what had happened. It turned out that they were a pair of lovers. 3 years ago, Shangguan Jusu had extraordinary talent and was high-spirited in this town, winning the woman's heart. However, 2 years ago, Shangguan Jusu's dantian had been destroyed while he was out on a mission. Even though his dantian had been saved, he no longer had the cultivation talent he had before. Even though the woman in the red dress did not abandon him, she became more and more impatient with him, and it was easy for them to argue. Because of this matter, Shangguan Jusu had been quite sensitive, and he had endured it all this time. However, he had come back early for Zhou Xuanji out of goodwill, so how could he allow himself to be slandered? Seeing Zhou Xuanji, the woman in red's expression became even worse, and she said in a low voice, Shangguan Jusu, the Sword Emperor has died, and the human race is facing a great disaster. You can't even take care of yourself, and yet you're raising abandoned children? With that, she flicked her sleeves and left. Shangguan Jusu wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, he clenched his fists and remained silent. If it was before, he might have chased after Zhou Xuanji and said all sorts of sweet nothings to him. But now, he did not want to abandon Zhou Xuanji. Because he had no parents since he was young, he had been adopted by an old beggar and relied on begging for a living. Later on, an immortal discovered that he had talent for cultivation, which changed his fate. Seeing Zhou Xuanji, he could not bear to see him, and he thought of himself. Sigh. He sighed and sat on the bench without saying a word. He suddenly remembered Zhou Xuanji. He quickly picked up the porcelain bottle and walked toward the bed. He turned around and saw Zhou Xuanji levitating above the bed. He was so frightened that his body trembled, and the vase fell to the ground. Ghost. Calm. Wonderful bookstore calm. Chapter 391. Zhou Xuanji expressionlessly looked at Shangguan Jusu. It was a little scary for a baby like him to look at someone like that. Shangguan Jusu drew his sword and took 3 steps back. He gulped and asked cautiously, "You, what kind of monster are you?" He secretly regretted it. As expected, he couldn't just randomly pick people up. If the demon child had attacked him last night, he shuddered. The more he thought about it, the more afraid he became. "I am your destiny," Zhou Xuanji said calmly. This boy was poor, but he took him in, which meant that he was kind. He was willing to help this kid. To him, it was a piece of cake. Before he became a great emperor, he could not return to Skyfall, in case he brought trouble to Skyfall. Spirit Sovereign Yen wanted to slaughter the human race, but he had to find the main character of the new world first. Otherwise, if his fate was cut off, his ambitions would fall through. Opportunity? Shangguan Jusu was stunned. His nervousness and fear instantly disappeared. He was too eager to become stronger. Back then, when he was in high spirits, who dared to not give him face? His beautiful woman was also like a little bird in front of him. Now, the more he thought about it, the angrier he became. He gritted his teeth and said, "What do I need to pay?" He had read many stories about demons bewitching people and helping them become stronger, but they would also deprive them of their humanity. "It's simple," Zhou Xuanji said, causing Shangguan Jusu's heart to leap to his throat. "Call me Grandpa 3 times. Cold sweat broke out on Shangguan Jusu's forehead, and his body trembled. "Wait a minute. What?" His eyes widened and his face was filled with astonishment. He suspected that he had heard wrongly. Zhou Xuanji gave a mysterious smile and said, "You practice the sword?" Shangguan Jusu came back to his senses. His face was filled with indignation as he said, "I set the Sword Emperor as my goal, so I naturally trained in the sword. Unfortunately, the Sword Emperor has already perished. If I can become stronger, I will definitely take revenge for the Sword Emperor." He would never have thought that the demon child in front of him was Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji's death was witnessed by everyone in the world. Zhou Xuanji coldly harumphed and said, "The Sword Emperor is nothing, he's still dead." Shangguan Jusu was furious. He said in a low voice, "The Sword Emperor did not die a humiliating death. He fought against so many seniors and can be ranked at the peak of history. What do you know?" The Sword Emperor was his belief, and he would not allow anyone to insult him. Zhou Xuanji laughed, feeling pleased in his heart. But in Shangguan Jusu's eyes, it was mockery. He dared to be angry, but did not dare to say anything. Skyfall. The entire Emperor Sword Court sank into sorrow. At this moment, Jiang Shui, Zhou Shaoxian, Xiao Jinghong, and the others were overjoyed. "Is that true? Master is not dead yet?" Chongming Demon Monarch asked excitedly. His entire body was trembling. Xian Xianghua nodded and said, "Do you still remember that black light before he died? This matter must not be spread out, otherwise the consequences will be unimaginable." Everyone nodded excitedly. Jiang Shui and Zhou Shaoxian hugged each other and cried tears of joy. Xian Xianghua raised her eyebrows and said, "Do you understand how powerful this technique is now?" Zhou Shaoxian nodded excitedly. "I want to learn." The little black snake also shouted, "This old man also." Before it could finish its sentence, Zhou Shaoxian kicked it away. "We can't even tell the disciples of Emperor Sword Court about this. You guys should pacify them first. Chaotic times are coming, and unity is very important." Since Zhou Xuanji was not here, she had to protect his empire. Jiang Shui nodded and said, "The disciples will not disperse. They are all filled with rage." She was very proud to say this. It was the same for the others. The disciples of Emperor Sword Court had bones of steel. Half a year passed quickly. Zhou Xuanji's fall ushered in a dark period for the human race. The various kingdoms lost control, and the empires could only control their own territories. The 8 sanctums were greatly weakened and could not rely on their influence. In a small town in the Bahan Empire. Shangguan Jusu's mouth twitched as he watched the child practice the sword in front of him. Half a year had passed. Zhou Xuanji looked like he was 2 or 3 years old. He held the book-cutter sword in his hand and looked incredibly powerful. Ever since Zhou Xuanji moved in, Shangguan Jusu could only sleep on a straw mat in the courtyard. Zhou Xuanji practiced the vibrant raindrop sword for a while before sheathing his sword and asking, "Have you learned it?" Shangguan Jusu said shamefully, "Only half." Half? Zhou Xuanji was a little surprised. He had only practiced it once, and this guy had already remembered half. This was an earth-grade sword technique. It seemed that this guy was quite talented. He practiced it again before letting Shangguan Jusu practice the sword by himself. Ever since he started following Zhou Xuanji, Shangguan Jusu did not go to the lecture hall anymore. It was not that he did not want to, but the lecture hall did not like him and found an opportunity to kick him out. That lady in the red dress never came again. Because of this, Shangguan Jusu was sad for a long time. He often cried in the middle of the night. He did not dare to go to the lady's residence to look for her because he was too ashamed. He was no longer the genius he used to be. Practice the sword well. When I'm satisfied, I will heal your dantian. Zhou Xuanji said this and returned to his room. After his rebirth, his cultivation would recover quickly. But he still worked hard to speed up the process. In the next period of time, Zhou Xuanji continued to grow from 74 years old. His height grew at a visible rate. Even Shangguan Jusu, who lived with him day and night, could sense it. He felt that Zhou Xuanji grew taller every day. Half a year later, he looked like he was 6 or 7 years old. At the same time, the Donghan Empire was massacred by the Heavenly Law Army. Blood flowed like a river, and the entire northern wilderness region was alarmed. Facing Spirit Sovereign Yan's brutality, the humans could do nothing. Zhou Xuanji could only hold it in. Another year passed. Zhou Xuanji was 76 years old, but he looked like he was 12 years old. In Shangguan Jusu's eyes, he was a devilish genius. The great Shang Empire was destroyed. Out of the 7 empires, only 5 were left. In the 3rd year of his rebirth, Zhou Xuanji had grown up. Shangguan Jusu's dantian had been healed by the Holy Light Redemption Sword, and he had reached great accomplishment in the Vibrant Raindrop Sword. Late at night, Zhou Xuanji came to the courtyard. Not far away, Shangguan Jusu was still cultivating on a straw mat. Phew, Zhou Xuanji took a deep breath and looked up at the night sky. He channeled magic energy into his right arm. He had already recovered his full cultivation, and so was the strength of his body. He was even more powerful than when he was alive. But he felt that it was not enough. Tonight, he was going to become a great emperor. Boom, thunder boomed, and billowing dark clouds gathered. Shangguan Jusu opened his eyes in shock. He looked at Zhou Xuanji in astonishment and asked, "What are you doing?" Somehow, he felt that Zhou Xuanji's figure was familiar. Ever since Zhou Xuanji looked more than 12 years old, he had been wearing a mask so that Shangguan Jusu could not recognize his true identity. Zhou Xuanji ignored him. Staring at the thunderclouds, he mumbled, "After tonight, the world will worship me as the emperor. Spirit Sovereign Yan, you will die a horrible death." His words made Shangguan Jusu open his eyes wide. Spirit Sovereign Yan, the evil god of the upper realm, the mortal world's greatest enemy. He wanted to kill Spirit Sovereign Yan? Shangguan Jusu rubbed his eyes and looked carefully. He suddenly realized that Zhou Xuanji's back looked so familiar. Who is he? Shangguan Jusu was confused. At this moment, the thunderclouds parted, and a pair of eyes that were even brighter than the moon appeared. Calm. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 392. The gigantic eye was so sacred that everyone in the town could see it. What's that? Is Spirit Sovereign Yan coming to kill us? No, it's not moving. Such a horrifying eye. I feel like I'm being seen through. What's going on? Everyone in the town was shocked. Cries of shock sounded out, and panic began to spread. In the courtyard, Shengguan Jusu was also dumbfounded. Because he was the closest to Zhou Xuanji, he felt it the most. He could sense an indescribable heavenly might, which made his hair stand on end. He wanted to kneel down and worship. He looked at Zhou Xuanji again and saw that Zhou Xuanji was glowing with a golden light. It was possible that only his figure could be seen. He had already defeated 10 great emperor candidates. There was no need for him to undergo a tribulation. He could become a great emperor directly by pouring fate into him. A wave of majestic fate rushed into his body and tempered his soul. His soul was transforming. This feeling, Zhou Xuanji looked down at his hands and mumbled to himself. He could not hide the excitement in his tone. He could clearly sense that he was becoming more powerful. The Tianxia map's image appeared above his head, faintly discernible. He looked up at the gigantic eye in the night sky and could not help but think about its origin. Is it the heavenly law? Hunyuan Royal City, in the royal study. Yang Di, who was writing, suddenly looked up at the night sky outside the window. He frowned deeply and mumbled, "This heavenly might." He stood up and walked out of the study. The man in the woven rush raincoat appeared beside him and said in a deep voice, "Someone is becoming a great emperor." Hearing this, Yang Di's pupils contracted. Becoming a great emperor? He instinctively thought of Spirit Sovereign Yen and the Heavenly Law Army and calmed down. That's right. Many great emperors had already been revived. The man in the woven rush raincoat pinched his fingers and divined. He vomited a mouthful of blood and stumbled backward, slamming into the palace wall. How can it be? First-class great emperor, supreme talent. He cried out in shock. He looked terrified, which made Yang Di frown. Outside the sea, Dao Seeker stood on a small boat amidst the raging waves. He suddenly turned around and looked in the direction of the northern wilderness region. Someone is becoming a great emperor? Could it be those heavenly law puppets? Dao Seeker's expression was unsightly. 3 years ago, when he heard about Zhou Xuanji's tragic death, he almost fainted. He had high hopes for Zhou Xuanji, but he failed at the last moment. Now that another person had become a martial monarch, despair surged in his heart. Was this tribulation really unbreakable? At this moment, a meteor streaked across the night sky and fell towards the horizon. Dao Seeker did not notice. He was still in a daze. Juadi Cliff. Spirit Sovereign Yen sat on the peak of the mountain and comprehended the power of heavenly law. Looking down, he saw that the entire mountain was filled with heavenly law puppets. There were over 300 of them, and they were all great emperors or great emperors. Every one of them was shining brightly like a deity. Suddenly, all of the heavenly law puppets turned to look in the direction of the Bahan dynasty. Spirit Sovereign Yen opened his eyes and said in bewilderment, "This heavenly might," as the owner of the heavenly path stone, he could feel the northern wilderness region's heavenly might the most. At this moment, he could sense an extremely terrifying heavenly might descending upon the mortal realm, and it was more powerful than any of his heavenly law puppets. He could not help but furrow his brows when he noticed the abnormal behavior of the heaven's Dao puppets. He stood up and prepared to fly towards the Bahan dynasty, but he thought of something else and sat back down. Although that heavenly might is powerful, it is not enough to threaten me. I have to think of a way to deal with the heavenly palace first. Spirit Sovereign Yen mumbled to himself with murderous intent in his eyes. Ever since he killed all the heavenly guards, the heavenly palace had sensed that something was wrong. Half a year ago, the heavenly palace sent an envoy who was killed by his heavenly law army. He understood that the heavenly palace would send even more powerful beings down to the mortal realm. However, the northern wilderness region was the mortal realm. After those from the upper realm descended, their cultivation would be suppressed to great tribulation scattered immortal. As long as they did not surpass great tribulation scattered immortal, he believed that his heavenly law army was invincible. To prevent the heavenly palace from sending too many powerful beings, he decided to continue creating heavenly law puppets. Creating heavenly law puppets did not come without a price. After coming to the mortal realm, his lifespan was no longer immortal. Every time he created a heavenly law puppet, his lifespan would be consumed. If this continued, he would die sooner or later. Unless he ascended back to the heavenly palace or became the ruler of the mortal realm and controlled the fate of the world. In the entire mortal realm, everyone who reached great tribulation scattered immortal could sense the heavenly might when Zhou Xuanji became a great emperor. It was boundless and filled everyone with awe. Zhou Xuanji bathed in the heavenly law fate, and his cultivation broke through to seventh tribulation scattered immortal straightaway. Somehow, he felt that the world had become so small in his perception. He looked up and could see through the night sky to another world. That world was shrouded in celestial mist, and there were many palaces and pavilions. Many celestial beasts circled in the sky, and many fairies flew around. Each of them was as beautiful as a flower and had an otherworldly aura. If he guessed correctly, that was the heavenly palace. At this moment, in a massive palace in the heavenly palace, hundreds of people with extraordinary auras stood in the palace. The men looked majestic and mighty, while the women were beautiful and noble. The palace was brightly lit, and silver pillars supported the massive palace. It was grand and exquisite, like the pillars supporting the sky. Sitting at the main seat was a man dressed in a luxurious silver emperor's robe. He wore a jade crown and looked majestic. Although he looked lazy, he gave off a domineering aura as if he was in control of the world. He was the lord of the heavenly palace, Sage Yutian. Spirit Sovereign Yen betrayed us and has the heavenly law stone. Is there anyone who is willing to descend to eliminate him? Sage Yutian spoke slowly. His expression was calm, and he did not take Spirit Sovereign Yen seriously at all. In reality, this was the case. They had already finished discussing other important matters, and if not for a Spirit Sovereign mentioning this, Sage Yutian most likely would not have known. This subordinate is willing to descend to the mortal realm. This fellow is a dog of our Xianyuan family, and he dares to betray us? He must be tired of living. A man dressed in silver Qilin armor stepped out. A crimson halo of light floated behind him, and with his silver hair, he gave off a sharp aura that could pierce through the clouds. As soon as he stepped out, the people in the palace started to become restless. TSK, who would have thought that Xianyuan Shenhao would choose to descend to the mortal realm? With his strength, it's a waste of his talent to do such a thing. However, why does Spirit Sovereign Yen have the heavenly law stone? This is worth investigating. Spirit Sovereign Yen is seeking death. Back then, his son Ji Xian found out about the crown prince, and now he's committing a crime. How foolish. The northern wilderness is currently in the world epoch, and the Xianyuan family most likely has other plans. Hearing the discussions around him, Xianyuan Shenhao's expression did not change, and he calmly looked at Sage Yutian, waiting for orders. Boom! At that moment, a powerful gust of wind rose up from the ground, causing everyone to look down in shock. They saw that the ground had become transparent, and they could see a golden figure in the stormy night, but they could not make out his appearance. Sage Yutian frowned and said in a low voice, "Great Emperor? Someone in the current northern wilderness can become a great emperor?" The northern wilderness belonged to the heavenly palace, and whenever a great emperor expert appeared, they would immediately sense it and try to rope them in. However, most great emperors did not choose to join the heavenly palace, and they would instead roam the world by themselves. The heavenly palace could not forcefully control a new great emperor, or else they would suffer the wrath of heaven. Chapter 393. All the experts of the heavenly palace stared at the golden figure, curious as to what kind of person he was. Most of the great emperors in the northern wilderness region were very powerful. 10,000 years ago, the Hegemon Sword Emperor ruled over a region, and even the heavenly palace did not dare to offend him. Before, when Shishenzong had ascended, the heavenly palace had wanted to forcefully take him in. After all, Shensong had not become a great emperor yet, so he was not protected by the heavenly law fate. However, they had never thought that the hegemon sword emperor would personally come to ask for him. Your Majesty, such a genius has appeared in the northern wilderness region, and I'm willing to head there personally. After killing spirit sovereign Yan, I'll subdue him. Xianyuan Shenhao cupped his fists again, his voice forceful and filled with confidence. Sage Yutian muttered to himself, go. Xianyuan Shenhao did not reveal any joy. He just calmly nodded. It was not only the heavenly palace. Back in the netherworld, Judge Chui and the other hell guards could also sense the heavenly might of becoming a great emperor. In the magistrate palace, Magistrate Chui put down his brush and looked out of the palace. He mumbled, someone in the northern wilderness region has become a great emperor so quickly. Becoming a martial monarch would allow one to obtain the heavenly Tao's karmic luck, shocking the world and making the gods weep. He understood the northern wilderness region. The human bloodline was not pure, and it was impossible for anyone to become a great emperor. Could it be that other races were going to rise? After all, this was a heaven and earth epic. He thought of Zhou Xuanji, and his eyes flashed as he muttered, "Brat, don't die, or else you will let me down." He had invested so many great spirit pills on Zhou Xuanji and did not want to waste them. Within the heavenly law fate, Zhou Xuanji was still becoming a great emperor. He was originally observing the Sky Hall, but an extremely strong force suppressed his spiritual will down to the mortal realm, and he could no longer observe the sky. He didn't think too much about it, thinking that the heavenly Tao didn't allow it. Boom! The deepest part of his soul suddenly exploded. A strange energy flowed through his bones and finally gathered in his heart. Dong! 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 His heart beat like a war drum once again, strong and powerful, causing his blood to boil. The heavenly law great emperor was above mortals and was on par with immortals and gods. It could enter yin and yang and traverse the 5 elements. Detected that the sword owner has become a heavenly law great emperor. Gotcha started. Ding! Congratulations, the sword owner has obtained, Celestial Shaker, Dream Devouring True Martial Devil Rinsing. The sword spirit's voice suddenly sounded in his mind, and he couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised. Another celestial shaking sword. The celestial shaking sword was very strong. With the sun-devouring Tiango sword, no one among the great tribulation's scattered immortals was a match for him one-on-one. Now that he had obtained the celestial shaking sword, how could he not be happy? In these 3 years, he had obtained a total of 5 amethyst divine swords. That's right, they were all amethyst rank. They were the Screaming Sword, the Perseverance Sword, the Dragon Perishing Sword, the Clamoring Sword, and the Flying Swan Sword. Information about the new godly sword appeared before his eyes. Sword name, Dream Devouring True Martial Demon Sweeping Level, Shocking Immortal Description, the true martial divine force can devour dreams and exterminate demons. Demons howl as soon as this sword is used. Be careful when using it. The description was not detailed enough, but it seemed to be very impressive. Zhou Xuanji could not help but think about even higher grade legendary swords. Ordinary ore, iron, bronze, silver, gold, amethyst, glorious gold, heavenly soul, intimidating spirit, celestial shaking, god slaying, Armageddon. Could the god slaying sword really slay gods? The Armageddon divine sword could destroy a world with one strike. He was looking forward to it. At that moment, the gigantic eyes in the night sky suddenly opened wide. A halo of light descended from the sky and landed on Zhou Xuanji's body. Boom! The area within a radius of 300 meters was flattened. Shangguan Jusu and some commoners were knocked unconscious. This is fate. Zhou Xuanji was shocked in his heart. He could sense that his fate had doubled. However, this was only the beginning. Numerous halos of light descended and fused into his body. There were 9 halos in total, which made his fate reach its peak. The entire human race's fate added together could not compare to his. The main thing was that the human race was about to die. Faintly, he understood the true meaning of this. Heavenly Law great emperors were divided into 9 grades. 9th grade was the weakest, while 1st grade was the most powerful. Great emperors had the emperor's might that could suppress mortals. The higher the grade, the more powerful the emperor's might. A 1st grade great emperor could suppress an 8th grade great emperor. Emperor's might was the signature divine ability of a great emperor. Those heavenly law puppets were not their true bodies and did not have the emperor's might. Otherwise, Zhou Xuanji could not have killed so many great emperor candidates. The powerful radiance dissipated, and Zhou Xuanji revealed himself. His mask had already turned into ashes. His eyes glowed with a purple light, which looked devilish and oppressive. The purple Tai Chi diagram on his forehead changed. 9 tiny patterns appeared at the edge of the Tai Chi diagram. They were like 9 tiny swords with their tips pointing outwards. He levitated in the air, and his body gave off a faint silver radiance. Under the night sky, he looked like a lofty god. He looked up and activated his emperor's might. Tonight, I, Zhou Xuanji, will become a great emperor in the name of the Sword Emperor. The human race will regard me as the emperor, and the northern wilderness will regard me as the leader. Spirit Sovereign Yen, you are dead for sure. His voice resounded across the northern wilderness region and beyond, stunning everyone in the night. The world was in an uproar. The Sword Emperor did not die, and he became a great emperor? How could it be? Under the night sky, among the waves. Dao Seeker opened his eyes wide. His body trembled, and an unprecedented joy surged into his heart. He became a great emperor. How could it be? How could it be? He mumbled. He suddenly raised his head and laughed out loud. Even the thunder and lightning could not scare away his excitement. He was not the only one who was excited. The entire human race was in an uproar. Countless commoners got up from their beds, and countless cultivators were roused from their meditation. The Sword Emperor was not dead, and he became a great emperor. The destruction of the Southern Han Empire and Great Shang Empire had caused the human race to fall into despair. This time, Zhou Xuanji once again brought hope to the human race with his domineering ways. The Sword Emperor became a great emperor. Ha ha ha. Am I dreaming? I knew it. He couldn't have died. He's the top cultivator in the world, the most powerful human. How could he die? Screw Lu Wuji. From tonight onwards, Zhou Xuanji is the most powerful human in history. Did I hear wrongly? Really? The heavens have eyes. They did not kill the human race. Everyone in the world cried tears of joy, and even overseas were discussing this. Ever since Spirit Sovereign Yen descended, the humans overseas had it even harder. They were surrounded and attacked by the other races, and their despair was far greater than the humans in the northern wilderness region. They did not expect the most powerful human to become a great emperor. At Skyfall, Jiang Shui, Daoya Old Man, Zhou Shaoxian, Xian Xianghua, and the others were overjoyed. Cheers came from the foot of the mountain, and even the sea of clouds could not block them. Mum! Father became a great emperor. Zhou Shaoxian cried out in excitement, as though she had become a great emperor. Xiao Jinghong gripped his sword and said with admiration, revered teacher's talent is unrivaled. Becoming a great emperor in just 3 years of rebirth. Xian Xianghua was in awe. She had been reborn so many times, but why had she not become a great emperor? She sighed, but she felt even more proud. This was the man she valued. Daoya Old Man stroked his long beard and sighed in amazement. Xian, if you knew this in the underworld, how happy would you be? I'm sure you did not expect your son to achieve such great things. While everyone in the world was exhilarated and overjoyed. But Juadi Cliff was extremely silent. Spirit Sovereign Yen stood on the peak with his fists tightly clenched, and veins bulged on his forehead. His eyes almost spat fire. Why was that brat not dead yet? Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 394. So what if you're a martial monarch? My heavenly law army will tear you to pieces. Spirit Sovereign Yen said as he gnashed his teeth. No wonder Zhou Xuanji's corpse did not have a complete soul 3 years ago. What a good trick. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. The heavenly hall's threat was imminent, and Zhou Xuanji, the cockroach, had become a great emperor, making him feel quite annoyed. He looked up at the stormy sky and murmured, "Looks like I have no choice but to create you." He raised his right hand and continued to create heavenly law puppets. At the bottom of the mountain, Wang Ho's body suddenly trembled. The other heavenly puppets were like wooden pillars, not moving at all. Wang Ho was very eye-catching. Spirit Sovereign Yen was filled with rage. He wanted to create even more powerful heavenly law puppets, so he didn't notice Marquis's abnormality. 3 years had passed, and his absolute control over the heavenly law puppets had already blinded his heart. On the other side of Juadi Cliff, Biyao Isin stood up and paced back and forth, continuously cursing. All kinds of vulgar words came one after another. It could be summed up in one word. F***ck. He was already surprised that Zhou Xuanji had not died, and he had never thought that this fellow would become a great emperor. Becoming a martial emperor was extremely difficult, not to mention that the current human race's bloodline was not pure, making it impossible for them to become a martial emperor. Why? He refused to accept this. He felt that Zhou Xuanji was the child of fate, the child of heavenly law. He had become a great emperor before his 80th birthday. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became, and jealousy grew in his heart. In the end, all his emotions turned into a sigh. Maybe he can really defeat Spirit Sovereign Yen? Biyao Isin thought to himself. He did not want to stay humiliated by Spirit Sovereign Yen. Shangguan Jusu woke up from his dream. He had a dream. He dreamt that the Sword Emperor, whom he worshipped the most, had actually taken him as a disciple and imparted him sword techniques. Every day, he would be able to admire the Sword Emperor's grace and was truly blessed. He reluctantly opened his eyes and saw a blue sky instead of the familiar straw hut. He suddenly recalled the memory before he fainted. He did a carp flip and jumped up. Where am I? He looked around in confusion and found himself in the middle of a forest. Not far away were the corpses of 6 demonic wolves. He was shocked to find that he was holding a token in his hand. The word Emperor was engraved on it. At the same time, there was a note with a sentence written on it. With this token, you can enter the Emperor's Sword Court. As if struck by lightning, he froze on the spot. After a long while, he muttered to himself, could it be that he is? His eyes widened and his breathing quickened. He was so excited that it was like he was on steroids. Hunyuan Royal City. Standing on the top of the palace, Sunlight Emperor looked at the vast universe and remained silent for a long time. Zhou Xuanji becoming a great emperor had a massive impact on his heart. He fell into an unprecedented state of confusion. All along, he had thought that he was the most powerful in the world. The battle before Zhou Xuanji's death had made him doubt himself. Fortunately, Zhou Xuanji had died. He did not expect Zhou Xuanji to make a comeback in just 3 years. He took a deep breath and turned to look at Juadi Cliff. His eyes became determined. As the former #1 in the world, he had never fought with Spirit Sovereign Yen during the human race's calamity. Even the Hunyuan Empire was full of complaints about him. This time, he intended to burn his boats. Either I die, or I become a great emperor. Sunlight Emperor murmured to himself. He turned into a golden light and leaped into the sky, disappearing into the horizon of the imperial city. While the northern wilderness was shocked by Zhou Xuanji becoming a great emperor, an uninvited guest came from overseas. A red-haired lady walked out from the sea and walked toward the beach. She wore a white dress and was drenched from head to toe. Her figure was perfectly outlined, and her face was cold and beautiful. Her eyes were indifferent. This is the northern wilderness region? The place where he was born? It's just a so-so. She mumbled to herself with a slight frown. The spiritual chi is ordinary, but the fate here is chaotic. It's more chaotic than any mortal realm. Seems like it's a wonderful time. Interesting. But I must find your corpse. She raised her hands, and they turned into countless blood-colored bats that flew everywhere. After she left, the ocean turned blood-red. It was a horrifying sight. In the faraway Juadi cliff, Spirit Sovereign Yen opened his eyes suddenly. He frowned and mumbled, "Who infiltrated the northern wilderness region? Their aura is so strange, and I can't predict their fate. It shouldn't be the Heavenly Hall. This isn't their style." The Heavenly Hall was domineering. They had always been high profile in the mortal realm under their control. He turned to look at the Heavenly Law puppets below with a proud smile. 500 Heavenly Law puppets, and all of them had the potential of a great emperor candidate. Especially the two at the front. The human race's first human emperor, Emperor Xia. The demon race's supreme ruler, Great Emperor Wuwang. The two of them stood at the front of the Heavenly Law army, their auras suppressing the crowd. Seeing them, Spirit Sovereign Yan's heroic spirit was reignited. No matter who came, they had to die. Boom! A pillar of light descended from the sky, breaking through the rumbling thunderclouds and landing on the peak of a mountain hundreds of meters away. It caused the mountain to shake, and dust flew into the air. Cracks extended down the mountain, covering the entire mountain. "You must be Spirit Sovereign Yen. I am Xianyuan Shenhao. Either I kill you, or you die here." A cold voice came from within the pillar of light, and a domineering aura shook Juadi Cliff. In the distance, Biyao Isin opened his eyes and said in shock, "I never thought that the Heavenly Hall's second-class Great Emperor would come." Xianyuan Shenhao was a famous genius of the Heavenly Hall, and he was also a divine weapon of the Heavenly Hall. He came from another mortal realm and inherited the Xianyuan clan's bloodline. He had been invincible for 20,000 years, and he had ascended after becoming a great emperor. He had obtained Sage Yutian's love. Spirit Sovereign Yan's expression was somewhat unnatural. As a subordinate spirit sovereign of the Xianyuan clan, Xianyuan Shenhao was like the heavens to him, an unreachable existence. He never thought that the Heavenly Hall would send such a peerless genius to kill him. However, he did not panic. He stood up and loudly laughed. "Xianyuan Shenhao. You don't understand the situation." 500 Heavenly Law puppets rushed into the sky and surrounded Xianyuan Shenhao. The pillar of light dissipated, and Xianyuan Shenhao appeared. He held a halberd and stood proudly. He swept his gaze over the Heavenly Law puppets and instantly frowned. There were so many great emperors. Even the weakest had the talent of a great emperor. Before he could speak again, the Heavenly Law army attacked him. Boom! Half an hour later, Spirit Sovereign Yen stood on the peak of the mountain with a disdainful smile. At the foot of the mountain, Xianyuan Shenhao half knelt on the ground. His armor was covered with blood, and he was surrounded by Heavenly Law puppets. Emperor Xia stood behind him, grabbing his hair. He gritted his teeth, and his eyes were cold and filled with killing intent. "Xianyuan Shenhao, you didn't expect this, did you?" Spirit Sovereign Yen smiled disdainfully. Great Emperor Wuwang stood behind him, protecting him in case he suffered a sneak attack. Xianyuan Shenhao said coldly, "Insect, you only borrowed the power of the Heavenly Law. Do you think you can overthrow the Heavenly Hall with just these few puppets?" If he had not descended into the mortal realm and his cultivation had been sealed, how could he have lost? "Ha ha ha, you won't be able to see the day I overthrow the Heavenly Hall." Spirit Sovereign Yen smiled disdainfully. Spirit Sovereign Yen laughed in disdain, feeling extremely good. So what if he was a second-class great emperor and a peerless genius? He was still kneeling in front of him. "You won't even live past today." A cold voice resounded through the sky, as if countless people were shouting at the same time. Spirit Sovereign Yen looked around in shock. Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 395. Zhou Xuanji. Get out here. Spirit Sovereign Yan furiously roared. Just from the voice, he knew who this person was. However, he could not sense Zhou Xuanji's aura, so he did not know where that fellow was. Xianyuan Shenhao frowned. He could not find this person either. Could it be that this person was the mortal who succeeded in becoming a great emperor not long ago? 1,000 meters away, Zhou Xuanji appeared on a mountain. He held 2 swords in his hands. They were the sun-devouring Tiango sword and the dream-devouring true martial devil-sweeping sword. The dream-devouring true martial's devil-vanquishing sword was a broadsword. Its blade was bright red, as if it had been forged with fresh blood. His tri-sun-flamed chi robe was no longer there. He wore a white robe and his black hair casually draped over his shoulders. Under the thunderclouds, his white robe fluttered. The aura of a sword Dao Great Emperor shook the wind and clouds. Sensing his gaze, Spirit Sovereign Yan turned around abruptly. When he saw Zhou Xuanji clearly, he laughed furiously and said, "Brat, you really did not die. Very good, you came to me again." Enraged, he immediately ordered 100 heavenly law puppets led by war god Xiling to attack. The 100 quasi-emperors and great sovereigns moved at the same time, stirring up a terrifying gale that shook the mountains. Zhou Xuanji's black hair danced wildly in the wind. He raised his eyelids, and his violet eyes looked incredibly devilish. A 9-sword violet Tai Chi diagram appeared on his forehead, and an indomitable aura exploded out from him. Spirit Sovereign Yan, I will let you feel the terror and despair of all living beings. He said softly, but his voice was like thunder that resounded throughout Juadi Cliff. War god Xiling punched out, causing the air to explode with a deafening sound. 9 sword souls appeared behind Zhou Xuanji. Sky-dominating divine sword, Soul Eater slash, Tempest slash, 100-mile flying sword, vibrant raindrop sword, moonlit wind sword dance, 10,000 ultimate steps, Trisource vein severing sword, 36 paths jade shao sword art. Each of the 9 sword souls had their own postures and auras. One of the sword souls disappeared into thin air and then condensed again. Pucci, war god Xiling was directly cut into 2 halves, turning into countless sparks that drifted away, no longer existing. Zhou Xuanji started to walk down the mountain. He did not walk quickly or slowly, and his gaze was fixed on Spirit Sovereign Yan. This scene caused Spirit Sovereign Yan's heart to jump. So powerful. Many great emperor candidates and great emperors leapt at him, and the sword souls behind Zhou Xuanji continuously shot out. Sword light continuously flashed, and an icy coldness filled the heavens and earth. He didn't lift his sword with both hands. With just his sword soul, he was a sword emperor. Not a single heavenly law puppet could withstand a single strike from him. After taking 10 steps, the 100 heavens path puppets were all destroyed. Silence. The world was silent. Spirit Sovereign Yan and Xianyuan Shenhao were both given a big fright, and they looked at Zhou Xuanji in a daze. This was especially true for Xianyuan Shenhao. He knew how powerful the war god 4 spirits and the heavenly law puppets were. Previously, he had fought 30 heavenly law puppets alone and was defeated. This person actually killed 100 venerables in 10 steps. How is this possible? How can there be such a powerful existence in the mortal world? Could it be that he is a true god that has descended to the mortal world? He swallowed his saliva, and his heart was in turmoil. If he was at the peak of his cultivation, he could easily do it. The key was that this was the mortal realm. The heavenly law would suppress one's cultivation. Little brat. Don't be so arrogant. Spirit Sovereign Yan roared furiously, and 300 heavenly law puppets blocked in front of him. In the distance, Biyao Yisan hid behind a hill and carefully watched. This is too ridiculous, he couldn't believe his eyes, he thought with trepidation. Zhou Xuanji's expression did not change as he slowly walked toward the foot of the hill. With both swords in his hands, his white robe fluttered in the wind. His eyes were so indifferent, filled with absolute confidence and a domineering aura that looked down on all enemies. The sun-devouring Tiango sword and dream-devouring heavenly martial devil-rinsing sword were both immortal-shaking legendary swords. With the world's power, no great tribulation scattered immortal could withstand them. After becoming a great emperor, he was reborn. His speed and reaction were much faster than before. Together with the sword soul's sharp attacks, it was not difficult for him to kill the heavenly law puppets instantly. 18 heavenly law puppets appeared in all directions around Zhou Xuanji simultaneously. They cast their divine abilities and prepared to kill him. Zhou Xuanji smiled with extreme disdain. Countless sword shadows appeared out of nowhere and tore the 18 heavenly law puppets into pieces, turning them into ashes. Primordial Chaos Sword Shadow. The Sword Soul's Primordial Chaos Sword Shadow covered a huge area, and its destructive power was just as horrifying. The 9 emperors of the Sword's Way followed. Countless sword chi pressed toward him from all directions, and the hill under his feet was pulverized immediately. But he did not hesitate. He continued to walk in the air. The 9 sword souls flashed and blocked all the sword chi of the 9 emperors. At the same time, he charged toward them with an even more domineering aura. Instant kill. 9 emperors of the Sword's Way, disperse. One after another, the heavenly law puppets were killed and exploded like fireworks. It was a magnificent sight. Zhou Xuanji's robe fluttered in the violent gale. He walked forward elegantly without raising the swords in his hands. His sharp eyes never blinked, and his murderous intent was locked onto Spirit Sovereign Yen. How can it be? How can he be so powerful? Spirit Sovereign Yan's face was dark. His body trembled slightly, and his heart was filled with fear. Xianyuan Shenhao's expression was complicated, and his mind was blank. This person was already so powerful in the mortal realm. If he went to the upper realm, he did not dare to imagine. Zhou Xuanji, he remembered this name. He would never forget this scene for the rest of his life. Before a cliff in the east, a figure was watching the battle in silence. It was Yang Di. Yang Di's face was livid, and he clenched his fists in his sleeves. The man in the woven rush raincoat appeared beside him and sighed, "This boy has already soared into the sky. He is no longer on the same level as you." The heart-wrenching words made Yang Di's body tremble. Can one become so powerful after becoming a great emperor? He mumbled to himself, his tone filled with reluctance. How could he defeat Zhou Xuanji? The man in the woven rush raincoat shook his head. He wanted to say that Zhou Xuanji could not be so powerful even if he became a great emperor. Because Zhou Xuanji was a first-class great emperor. The number of first-class great emperors in the human race could be counted on one's fingers. Even a first-class great emperor should not have such battle power. Zhou Xuanji, who are you? Spirit Sovereign Yen gnashed his teeth and roared furiously. His face was hideous, and he was extremely furious. He did not believe that an ordinary person could have such power. Even if he became a great emperor, he could not be so powerful. Could this guy be the reincarnation of a powerhouse from the upper realm? Although Bai Haoisen was in such a sorry state, there were many people more powerful than him in the upper realm. Could he be the reincarnation of a true god? At the thought of this, the fear in his heart grew even stronger. I'm Zhou Xuanji, the one and only Sword Emperor. Zhou Xuanji laughed coldly. The murderous intent in his words froze the heavens and earth. After 100 steps, the 300 heavenly law puppets were all destroyed. The Tianxia map provided him with magic energy madly. The power of the world surrounded his body, forming a visible gale. The 9 sword souls were still standing proudly behind him, looking majestic and mighty. Spirit Sovereign Yen was furious. He sent Emperor Xia to lead 50 heavenly law puppets to kill Zhou Xuanji. Xianyuan Shenhao escaped from danger because of this, and he collapsed onto the ground pathetically. Emperor Xia raised his right arm, and a radiant sun appeared on his palm. It had a diameter of 3,000 meters. He swung his right hand, and the majestic radiant sun smashed toward Zhou Xuanji. The sword flashed. The radiant sun was extinguished, and Emperor Xia was killed. He could not even withstand a single blow. Zhou Xuanji laughed condescendingly as he got closer and closer to Spirit Sovereign Yan. He was not in a hurry to kill Spirit Sovereign Yan. He wanted Spirit Sovereign Yan to experience the helplessness of death. Why is it like this? Why? Spirit Sovereign Yan panicked completely. Even Emperor Xia could not defeat Zhou Xuanji. He did not have many heavenly law puppets left to rely on. Calm. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 396. Zhou Xuanji took 8 steps in the air, and the 50 great emperors and great emperors all dissipated. No one could block a single strike from him. The wind and waves were like dragons, and the thunder and lightning were mighty. His white robe was not damaged, nor was there a speck of dust on it. Spirit Sovereign Yan was so scared that he felt like his guts were going to explode. He immediately used his hands to continue drawing the power of heavenly law to create heavenly law puppets. You overestimate yourself. The current you is no match for me. No matter how many puppets you hire, you will not be able to escape death. Zhou Xuanji looked at Spirit Sovereign Yan condescendingly as he laughed. He had not even used his full strength, and Spirit Sovereign Yan was already afraid. How boring. He crossed 30 meters with a single step, increasing his pace. Seeing this, Spirit Sovereign Yan's heart thumped, and his scalp turned numb. Heavens! Please bestow me with tyranny. Spirit Sovereign Yan roared furiously. He couldn't care less about the loss of his lifespan. He had to escape this calamity. Great Emperor Wuwang and Lu Wuji led the remaining heavenly law puppets and charged at Zhou Xuanji ferociously. They did not know fear and only knew how to obey orders. Only Marquis did not move. Seeing Marquis's abnormality, Spirit Sovereign Yan's heart trembled, but he didn't have time to think. Boom! 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 Bolts of lightning descended. Next, numerous heavenly law puppets flew out and swarmed toward Zhou Xuanji. With the 9 sword souls, Zhou Xuanji was extremely domineering. He walked forward step by step without looking back. The heavenly law puppets were destroyed one after another. Their divine abilities could not even touch Zhou Xuanji. The sword chi was like a rainbow, and the ground below shook violently. Billowing dust swept into the distance like a sandstorm, connecting with the thunderclouds and covering the sky. Seeing this berserk scene, Biyao Yisun gulped. 2F** King Strong. At this moment, he suddenly wanted to become sworn brothers with Zhou Xuanji. With Zhou Xuanji, did he still need to self-destruct in the northern wilderness region? No. I am the heartless great emperor. You can't be such a coward. How could he have the idea of joining him just because he couldn't beat him? Zhou Xuanji, you and I can work together. The Sky Palace is your true enemy. Spirit Sovereign Yan said with gritted teeth. Seeing that the heavenly law puppets could do nothing to Zhou Xuanji, he was extremely afraid. Even his soul was trembling. Zhou Xuanji stared at him and said calmly, I want to kill you. There's no point in killing me. The heavenly hall will still come down. I just want to kill you. Can you be a little more rational? I can be your helper. It's impossible for you to stop the Sky Palace. But I still want to kill you. Are you crazy? Do you know how many experts are hidden in the Heavenly Palace? I still want to kill you. Spirit Sovereign Yan almost collapsed. Was there such a huge grudge between them? Up until now, he had not killed anyone by Zhou Xuanji's side, he had only slaughtered humans. However, he neglected one point. He had killed Zhou Xuanji. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. After the Heavenly Path puppets landed on the ground, they quickly charged forward. Spirit Sovereign Yan aged at a speed visible to the naked eye, but he had no choice but to hold on. After killing 800 heavenly law puppets, Spirit Sovereign Yen was no longer as domineering as before. His hair was white, and his skin was wrinkled. He was like a candle in the wind, about to be extinguished at any moment. Damn it, Spirit Sovereign Yan's eyes were bloodshot, and his body felt cold from head to toe. Zhou Xuanji was less than 300 meters away from him. Their eyes met, and he could see the murderous intent in Zhou Xuanji's eyes. An unresolvable killing intent. Your trump card can't even block one slash from me. You are such a piece of trash. Zhou Xuanji laughed condescendingly, which made Spirit Sovereign Yen so furious that he almost exploded. Just when he was about to speak, a figure dashed toward him. It was Biyao Yisun. Let this emperor kill this guy. Biyao Yisun roared furiously. His eyes were sharp like an unparalleled war god. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow. This dog wanted to kill him? Just when he was about to send Biyao Yisun flying. Biyao Yisun was already 100 meters away from them. He raised his arms and roared furiously. Damn! Zhou Xuanji could not help but curse. Wasn't this guy too direct? Boom! Biyao Yisun self-destructed, and a powerful radiance engulfed Zhou Xuanji and Spirit Sovereign Yen. Marquis quickly dodged. The ground crumbled from the impact of the explosion. The thunderclouds were blown away, and everything turned into dust. The powerful radiance illuminated the entire Juadi cliff, and countless ghosts hid in fear. Yang Di and the man in the woven rush raincoat flew into the sky, away from the explosion. Other than self-destructing, what else does this guy know? Yang Di said with gritted teeth. He had fought Biyao Yisun before, and this guy self-destructed when he could not win. He did not expect this guy to self-destruct again to kill Spirit Sovereign Yen. He looked forward to it. Could Biyao Yisun blast Zhou Xuanji to death? The man in the woven rush raincoat sighed, the great Emperor Heartless has fallen to such a state. A long while later. The powerful radiance dissipated, and the shockwave from the explosion subsided. Amidst the billowing dust, Zhou Xuanji stood in the air. The dream-devouring heavenly martial demon destroyer in his right hand pierced through Spirit Sovereign Yan's chest and lifted him into the air. At this moment, Spirit Sovereign Yen was covered in blood, and his bones could be seen on some parts of his body. He looked extremely wretched. Zhou Xuanji was not injured. With world reincarnation activated, how could Biyao Yisun's self-destruction hurt him? Staring at Spirit Sovereign Yen, Zhou Xuanji said with a disdainful smile, Now, a passerby wants to commit suicide, or should I kill you with my own hands? What are your last words before you die? Spirit Sovereign Yen was already at the end of his rope when he created the heavenly law puppets crazily. After Biyao Yisun's self-destruction, he lost all his combat power. At this moment, he was no different from a dead dog. Spirit Sovereign Yen gritted his teeth and said, Zhou Xuanji, you will regret this. One day, you will understand that my ambition was right. The Northern Wilderness region humans should not have been saved. The bloodline of the Northern Wilderness humans is impure because of that senior's mighty power. With your power, you should have ascended and left the human race, but you chose to be involved in this. The Northern Wilderness humans have produced so many powerful cultivators. Have you seen any of them return? The more he spoke, the angrier he became, and he coughed up blood continuously. Who is that senior? Zhou Xuanji asked expressionlessly. Spirit Sovereign Yen did not reply but said with gritted teeth, I am the chosen one, protected by the heavenly law. I cannot, PFFTT. Zhou Xuanji swung his sword with his left hand and decapitated Spirit Sovereign Yen. Boom! Spirit Sovereign Yan's body radiated with a powerful rainbow radiance and soared into the clouds. A rock leaped out and flew to the top of the sky. The heavenly law stone. Zhou Xuanji wanted to grab it instinctively, but a sense of danger came to his mind, and he stopped instinctively. He trusted his instincts. So, he watched as the heavenly law stone flew into the sky. The thunderclouds parted, and a gigantic black hole appeared. Looking at the hole, Zhou Xuanji felt a chill in his heart. At this moment, a silhouette came from afar. It was Yang Di. He chased after the heavenly law stone. Soon, he caught hold of the heavenly law stone and was brought toward the black hole by it. He looked back at Zhou Xuanji with a calm expression and determined eyes. Zhou Xuanji, you have not truly fought with this emperor. This emperor is the top cultivator in the world. It was like this in the past, now, and in the future. He said proudly, regaining his domineering attitude. Zhou Xuanji was speechless. Little brother, you are playing with fire. Even he felt threatened by it. How could Yang Di resist? Shortly after, under his gaze, Yang Di and the heavenly law stone disappeared into the black hole. You were smart to not grab the heavenly law stone. A cold voice came. Zhou Xuanji turned around and saw Marquis looking at him. Yes. Chapter 397. This heavenly law puppet can speak. It has its own consciousness. Zhou Xuanji was shocked in his heart. He stared at Marquis and asked, You have your own consciousness? Marquis maintained his silhouette and replied calmly, Back then, when I became a great emperor, I played some tricks, but I did not expect to use them. The other great emperors and great emperors might have them too, but they allowed it silently. If those ancient powerhouses were still alive, their cultivation must have reached a horrifying level. How could they not sense that someone created their heavenly law puppets? After all, the heavenly law puppets and the original body were connected by fate. Allowed it silently? Could it be that what Spirit Sovereign Yen said was true? The northern wilderness humans have an unspeakable secret? Zhou Xuanji asked with a frown. Those powerhouses allowed Spirit Sovereign Yen to slaughter the humans. It was really disappointing. The image of the sages in his eyes was like a dream. Marquis nodded and said, The humans today are not the descendants of Emperor Xia. Zhou Xuanji frowned even more. He had heard about this before. Back then, Lu Wuji ascended out of anger because of this. The current human ancestor of the northern wastelands is still alive, but he has already fallen into the evil path, and is now a source of bad luck. His existence will affect the destiny of his descendants, and as time goes by, everyone will follow him into the evil path, and harm the many heavens. Do you understand? Marquis's words made Zhou Xuanji fall into silence. A while later, he said, The sins of the ancestors must be cleansed by the blood of the descendants? This is just an excuse for your helplessness. You are afraid. Why should the current human race be responsible for their ancestors from more than 100,000 years ago? They could not choose their birth. Could this be fate? Marquis smiled and said, You are right. That's why I'm here. I wanted to wait for an opportunity, but I did not expect you to rise so quickly. You really impressed me. Zhou Xuanji raised his brows slightly and felt warmth in his heart. Marquis was indeed the most powerful person in the history of the human race. Daoya old man was right. This guy was indeed the most domineering existence in the history of the human race. To be honest, I wanted to save you when you were fighting back then. But I saw that you knew the celestial devil rebirth technique, so I did not help. The person who created this energy technique was my old friend. It's a pity that he fell into the evil path because of love and was doomed eternally. Marquis sighed endlessly as he spoke. He lamented, only those who are deeply in love can master this technique. Zhou Xuanji could not help but think of Xian Xianghua. Who is that person? Who tampered with the human bloodline? Zhou Xuanji asked as he looked at Marquis. He felt an unprecedented interest in human history. Those seemingly dead people were actually controlling this world. Wang Ho replied, that northern wilderness human's ancestor was called the demonic emperor. As for who tampered with the northern wilderness human bloodline, I'm not sure either, only that his surname was Ren. The demonic emperor. Could it be the master of the demonic emperor bloodline? Zhou Xuanji was shocked in his heart. As for the person with the surname Ren, He had no way of contacting him. From what he knew, there didn't seem to be anyone with the surname Ren who was particularly strong. The Heavenly Palace is not scary, the scary ones are those who want to kill the humans of the Northern Wilderness. I also belong to the Northern Wilderness, but I have already broken through the restrictions of my race, so I don't have to worry about anything. However, you are different. Your path of growth will be filled with difficulties. Are you ready? Wang Ho continued. His tone was solemn as if he was passing on his last words. Zhou Xuanji replied, I've already prepared it. Along the way, he had already encountered a lot of difficulties. What's your plan? He asked instead. Spirit Sovereign Yen was dead, and the Heavenly Law Stone had disappeared. Wang Ho regained his freedom. Wang Ho said with a smile, I'm just a remnant soul. My life and death have nothing to do with me. I plan to investigate some things in the Northern Wilderness region. The appearance of the Heavenly Law Stone has already caused great chaos in the Northern Wilderness region, and the Heavenly Law has taken it back. That guy overestimated himself and chased after the Heavenly Law Stone just now, so he will be in a miserable state. However, I'm curious who gave him the Heavenly Law Stone. With Spirit Sovereign Yan's capability, he could not have obtained the Heavenly Law Stone. There are too many mysteries in this mortal realm. You're on your own. After that, he turned around and left. Zhou Xuanji did not stop him. He looked at the direction in which Wang Ho left and was in deep thought. The thunderclouds dispersed, and the black hole disappeared as well. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and channeled his magic energy to draw upon the power of the heavens and earth to send a message to the world. Spirit Sovereign Yen and the Heavenly Law Army have been killed by me, Zhou Xuanji. All races should stop fighting and rest. The crisis is not over yet. The Heavenly Palace behind Spirit Sovereign Yen will descend soon. Hearing this, the world was shocked. Immense joy exploded in every corner of the world, including overseas. Without Spirit Sovereign Yen, what was the point of the other races fighting for the position of the main character? The entire world began cheering the Sword Emperor's name. Countless people cried tears of joy, and some were bawling for their dead relatives and friends. Bahan Empire. In a city, Shangguan Jusu and the woman in the red dress stood in front of the gate of a residence. The surrounding streets were in a frenzy. Countless people were roaring, cheering, and crying. Shangguan Jusu and the woman were stunned. The love between a man and a woman was not greater than life and death. He did it. Shangguan Jusu's expression was complicated. He was not surprised. Because he had long felt that Zhou Xuanji had a chance to win. In his eyes, Zhou Xuanji was invincible and omnipotent. He had witnessed Zhou Xuanji's rebirth, and he felt a sense of accomplishment. The world is at peace now. You don't have to work so hard to cultivate anymore. I won't force you anymore, the woman in the red dress said. The woman in the red dress had a complicated look in her eyes. The two had been in love for many years after all. Recalling how high-spirited Shangguan Jusu was, she could not help but fall into a daze. Shangguan Jusu gave a brilliant smile and said, No, I will work even harder than before. Thank you for taking care of me for the past 3 years. I will not come back anymore. I hope you can find a good partner. After that, he turned around and left. The woman in the red dress was stunned. She took 2 steps forward and asked, Where are you going? Shangguan Jusu held onto the sheath and waved it. He did not speak or look back. The past had been severed by his sword. After spending 3 years with Zhou Xuanji, his heart had become broad-minded and changed. He was no longer obsessed with love. He wanted to become someone who could support the heavens and earth like Zhou Xuanji. Supporting the world with the sword. Saving the world with the sword. Looking at his determined back view, the woman in the red dress fell into a daze. She suddenly felt a little regretful. All her emotions could not be turned into words to ask him to stay. She felt like there was a fishbone stuck in her throat. At Juadi Cliff. Zhou Xuanji came up to Xianyuan Shenhao and took out the Holy Light Redemption Sword to heal him. He could sense Xianyuan Shenhao's great emperor aura. This brat was a second-class great emperor. Although he was not as good as him, he was still a devilish cultivator. Why did you save me? Xianyuan Shenhao sat up and asked with a complicated expression. Before he descended into the mortal realm, he promised Sage Yutian that he would subdue Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji stood before him and looked down at him. I just wanted to save you. Do I need a reason? A second-class great emperor as a sword slave? Was that cool? Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 398. He just wanted to save her. Did he need a reason? Xianyuan Shenhao listened silently, not knowing what to say. After a while, Zhou Xuanji sheathed his sword and was prepared to leave. Aren't you going to ask about my background? Xianyuan Shenhao could not help but ask. Zhou Xuanji's casual attitude made him feel humiliated. Am I that unbearable? One had to know that in the heavenly hall, he got whatever he wanted. Even Sage Yutian had to treat him with respect. Zhou Xuanji stopped and asked, You are from the heavenly hall, right? I know. Xianyuan Shenhao didn't give up. He said, I came to capture you and put you under heavenly hall's control. Zhou Xuanji looked back at him indifferently and said, You are not a match for me. His heart was pierced. Xianyuan Shenhao was so angry that he coughed up blood. He struggled to stand up. If I can defeat you, will you come with me? He looked at Zhou Xuanji and asked with determination. He had personally witnessed how powerful Zhou Xuanji was. It was the first time he had seen a seventh tribulation scattered immortal with such power. He must rope in such a prodigy for the Sky Palace. Zhou Xuanji asked with a smile, What if you lose? Xianyuan Shenhao fell silent. From the looks of things, it was impossible for him to defeat Zhou Xuanji in the northern wilderness region. You're a second-grade great sovereign. Is there anyone in the heavenly palace with a higher talent than you? Zhou Xuanji asked. Hearing this, an arrogant expression appeared on Xianyuan Shenhao's face. He said proudly, No. Apart from me, the most talented person is only a fourth-grade great sovereign. Experts who had surpassed the fourth-grade great sovereign realm looked down on the heaven palace. Follow me. I'm a class 1 great sovereign. When I ascend, even the heavenly palace will have to submit to me. Zhou Xuanji said as he raised his brow. His words were domineering and did not take the heavenly hall seriously at all. First-class great emperor. Xianyuan Shenhao fell silent again. Zhou Xuanji leaped up and left swiftly. He wanted to subdue Xianyuan Shenhao, but he wasn't in a hurry. This kind of heaven's chosen would definitely not go back so easily, because he had been defeated too badly earlier. This fellow would definitely challenge him again in the future. There was still a long way to go, so he had to loosen the reins only to grasp better. No hurry, no hurry. Zhou Xuanji, who are you? Xianyuan Shenhao muttered to himself, clenching his fists. The previous battle was too shocking. He would never forget it for the rest of his life. After leaving Juadi Cliff, Zhou Xuanji stopped. Come out. Just as he finished speaking, the man in the raincoat appeared out of thin air in front of him. This kid, the man in the woven rush raincoat, felt quite startled. He had never thought that Zhou Xuanji's perception would reach such a level. He opened his mouth and said, Sunlight Emperor is stubborn and doomed. I want to follow you and assist you. What do you think? Zhou Xuanji said with interest, Oh? What do you want, and how can you help me? Weren't you very arrogant before? When I fought Huangquan Drake King, you said that I would definitely die. What about now? He was secretly pleased, but he didn't show it. After becoming a great emperor, he no longer cared about the man in the woven rush raincoat. It was not an exaggeration to say that he did not care about anyone in the entire northern wilderness region. Only his wife was an exception. I just want the human race to prosper and maintain its position as the main character of the world. I can do whatever you want me to do, but as a tribulation executive, I can't attack the people of the world. I can't even have physical contact with them. The man in the raincoat said honestly. He was still very confident. Compared to Dao Seeker, he knew more about the northern wilderness region. Zhou Xuanji fell into deep thought and did not give an answer immediately. The man in the woven rush raincoat took a deep breath and said, I can reveal a shocking piece of news to you now. A person from the upper world who doesn't belong to the heavenly palace has already infiltrated the northern wilderness region. Her strength is at 9 tribulations scattered immortal, the peak of the mortal world. Zhou Xuanji frowned and asked, who is she? The man in the raincoat did not hide anything. This person from the upper realm was called Xiao Hongjun. She was an evil woman with a lot of sins. Even the heavenly hall could not do anything to her. The man in the woven rush raincoat did not know the reason why she descended into the mortal world. However, according to him, Xiao Hongjun was a greater threat than the heavenly hall. It was said that no matter where this devil went, he would bring misery and suffering. His father was a leading figure in the upper realm's devil path and was as powerful as an immortal. All right, you can follow me from now on. I want you to investigate the whereabouts of the descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline. As for Xiao Hongjun, he did not want to care about her for now. At least for now, Xiao Hongjun did not act recklessly. He didn't want to create enmity for no reason. The hatred between the heavenly palace and the ancestors of the human race was already deep enough. All right. The man in the raincoat was straightforward and left immediately. After he disappeared, Zhou Xuanji remembered something. I forgot to get this guy to show his true colors. He's always acting mysterious and acting like a villain. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and laughed. After that, he flew towards Skyfall. At the same time, the human sanctums and empires began to take action. Previously, because of Spirit's sovereign Yen, they could only hide. But now, they had to regain control of their territories. The restless demons all returned home in fear and did not dare to harass the humans. The human race had a great emperor. Every time everyone thought about this, they would be shocked. In the past, they could only listen to legends. But now, there were existences that surpassed legends. The entire world was discussing Zhou Xuanji. He defeated Lu Wuji, Wang Ho, the 9 emperors of the Sword's Way, War God Xiling, Emperor Xia, Great Emperor Wu Wang, Buddha Ghost Emperor, and so on before he ascended. Those who had shaken history could not defeat Zhou Xuanji even if they all worked together. This was too horrifying. No one doubted it because Spirit's sovereign Yen had already died in Zhou Xuanji's hands. 3 days later, Shanghai Ziggurat began publishing a biography. The Era of the Sword Emperor. This book recorded all of Zhou Xuanji's deeds since he was young. It described Zhou Xuanji as the most powerful great emperor in history. To suck up to Zhou Xuanji, Shanghai Ziggurat distributed this book for free. They distributed millions of copies every day, and it quickly became popular among the humans. On Skyfall, the disciples were scattered all over the mountain to practice their swords. As they practiced, they discussed excitedly. They had been excited for a few days, waiting for Zhou Xuanji's return. Zhou Xuanji becoming a great emperor made Emperor Sword Court the most powerful sect in the northern wilderness region. In the future, when they traveled the world, they would be very proud. Little did they know that their grand teacher had already returned to the summit. Zhou Xuanji gathered everyone together. Chen Bantian and Meng Tianlang had also returned. Other than Jiang Shui, Daoya Old Man, and Xian Xianghua, everyone knelt before him, each more excited than the last. Zhou Xuanji sat on a stone bench and said with a smile, "Get up." Everyone was shocked. Just by sitting there and doing nothing, he gave them an immense pressure. He was more majestic than anyone they had ever seen in their lives. Daoya Old Man stroked his long beard and smiled. He was also shocked in his heart. This is a heavenly law, great emperor? Tell me about Emperor Sword Court's situation first. Zhou Xuanji asked first. Everyone fought to answer first, which made him laugh. In these 3 years, Emperor Sword Court had lost some disciples, but it did not affect its foundation. It continued to develop steadily. After chatting with everyone for a while, Xian Xianghua called him to a place with no one else around. The two came to a forest. Xian Xianghua turned to look at him with a serious expression and said, "These days, I have been dreaming of you. I dreamed of being devoured by countless blood bats." Calm. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 399. Blood Bat? Zhou Xuanji asked in astonishment. He had already become a first-class great emperor. Who else in the mortal world could kill him? He immediately thought of the demonic emperor and Xiao Hongjun. Xian Xianghua sighed and said, "That's right. Blood-colored bat. Initially, I thought I was too worried about you, which was why I had a dream. But later on, the dream became more realistic. With our cultivation, how can we dream so easily? Great tribulation scattered immortals cultivated day and night. How could they have time to sleep?" Zhou Xuanji comforted her, "Don't overthink. I'm no longer the same as before. Do you still think I'm weak?" Xian Xianghua thought about it and realized that it was true. Many people said that this brat would surely die. But he did not. Moreover, he knew the celestial devil rebirth technique. He could be reborn after death. She smiled proudly, "Of course, with my celestial devil rebirth technique." Zhou Xuanji curled his lip and said, "It's because I'm powerful. Or else, how could I master the celestial devil rebirth technique so quickly?" The two began to bicker. Next, Emperor Sword Court began to reorganize itself. Zhou Xuanji gathered all the disciples and brainwashed them. All the disciples worked hard on their sword techniques as though they were injected with chicken blood. The other factions in the northern wilderness region also began to rebuild and recuperate. Zhou Xuanji's legend was still being spread. He was quickly deified. After Yang Di's departure, no one in the world could be compared to him. The Sword Emperor ruled the world. The era of the Sword's Way had arrived. Overseas. Boom! A mountain on an island was split in half. Dao Seeker fell into the rubble and was in a sorry state. Dust flew up, and his face was covered in blood. He looked up. A red-haired lady in a white dress levitated in the air with a mocking smile. "Who are you?" Dao Seeker asked with gritted teeth. His heart was filled with shock. He was a tribulation executive. Mortals could not hurt him at all. How could this lady? "Remember, my name is Xiao Hongjun. From today onwards, you will serve me, tribulation executive." The red-haired lady smiled arrogantly. Although she was beautiful, she gave off a terrifying vibe. Xiao Hongjun. Dao Seeker's pupils contracted. He swallowed his saliva and got up with much difficulty. "Why did you come to the northern wilderness region? Was it the Heavenly Hall's will?" Xiao Hongjun heard him and laughed disdainfully. "Heavenly Hall is nothing. When I broke into the Heavenly Hall back then, who could stop me other than Sage Yutian?" Qiu Dao was not surprised. Instead, he became even more terrified. In other words, the Heavenly Palace was not the only enemy of the northern wilderness region. Xiao Hongjun stared at Dao Seeker and asked, "Do you know where the tomb of great Emperor Wuwang is?" Emperor Wuwang. Dao Seeker frowned. He instantly thought of many things. At this moment, an invisible force lifted him up and brought him before Xiao Hongjun. "Tell me the truth, or I will kill you," Xiao Hongjun threatened. Countless blood bats emerged from her back and surrounded Qiu Dao. Dao Seeker sighed and asked, "Great Emperor Wuwang has been dead for 110,000 years. Where can we find his tomb? Even if there is one, it would have been dug out long ago." Xiao Hongjun frowned, and a murderous aura appeared between her brows. Where did that Zhou Xuanji come from? She changed the topic and asked. She had observed the battle at Juadi Cliff through her spell when she was overseas, and it left a deep impression on her. Such a prodigy should not exist in the mortal world. She suspected that Zhou Xuanji had obtained Great Emperor Wuwang's legacy, or else how could he be so powerful? Moreover, she knew that the current northern wilderness humans could not become great emperors. Dao Seeker's heart trembled. He did not want anything to happen to Zhou Xuanji. But facing Xiao Hongjuan's powerful might, he could not resist. Zhou Xuanji has no background. His fate was changed when he was young, so it's impossible to predict his fate. Dao Seeker replied, hoping to dispel Xiao Hongjuan's thoughts about Zhou Xuanji. Xiao Hongjuan narrowed her eyes and laughed coldly. I will give you time. You must find Great Emperor Wuwang's tomb. Also, the Heavenly Hall's genius, Ji Xian, has already reincarnated. His name is Su Han, and he's at the coastal area in the east of the northern wilderness region. Draw him over to your side. After that, bring him to me with information about him and Great Emperor Wuwang's tomb. Within 3 years, if you can't do it, I will kill you. Not only you, but I will slaughter the entire northern wilderness human race. After that, the human ancestors will probably thank me. You should understand. Dao Seeker was covered in cold sweat and could only agree. He was extremely afraid of Xiao Hongjun. It was his first time encountering someone who could hurt him. Tribulation executives did not have physical bodies in the northern wilderness region, and ordinary objects could not invade them. But when Xiao Hongjun attacked him, she could solidify his physical body. He shuddered at the thought of it. After that, Dao Seeker left pathetically. Xiao Hongjun stood among the swarm of blood bats and began thinking. The demonic emperor's son, the violet demon monarch's heart, Ji Xian. Interesting. I did not expect 3 matchless fates to gather in the same mortal realm, and in the same era. She mumbled to herself with a smile that was bewitchingly beautiful. The Heavenly Hall. Sage Yutian sat on the throne with a deep frown. Everyone below him was silent. The atmosphere was oppressive, and the legs of those standing at the back were trembling. Some of them could not bear the pressure. When Sage Yutian was enraged, a powerful aura would wreak havoc. Those with weak cultivation could not bear it. Your Majesty, Xianyuan Shenhao is the top genius of the Heavenly Hall. He will not fail. A muscular man stood up and said. He was the clan leader of the Xianyuan clan, Xianyuan Zhengzun. His face was solemn, but his heart was filled with guilt. If Xianyuan Shenhao really failed in the mortal realm, it would be a great humiliation. This brat was so confident just now. What if he really fails? Sage Yutian asked with squinted eyes. He had invested too many resources and expectations on Xianyuan Shenhao. He could not allow Xianyuan Shenhao to fail. Xianyuan Zhengzun wanted to say something but hesitated. Eventually, he chose to keep his mouth shut. As a second-class great emperor, he cannot dominate the mortal realm. What a joke. Your Majesty, it seems like you cannot indulge the geniuses of the Xianyuan clan anymore. A white-bearded old man stood up and said. He wore a long white robe and had an extraordinary demeanor. Xianyuan Zhengzun's face darkened in anger. Sage Yutian snorted coldly and did not speak anymore. The atmosphere in the palace fell into silence again. Late at night. On the peak of Skyfall. Zhou Xuanji sat by the cliff and cultivated. Even though he had already become a great emperor, he did not slack off. After becoming a great emperor, his cultivation grew tremendously. Compared to before, he progressed at a tremendous pace. However, the amount of spiritual qi required for each stage of heavenly law great emperor was much more than before. Zhou Xuanji, come and meet me. A voice sounded out in Zhou Xuanji's mind, and he opened his eyes in shock. He frowned and scanned with his divine sense. Soon, he locked onto the other party. It was 250 miles away. Under the moonlight, a blue-robed man stood on the cliff and looked up at the bright moon. It was none other than Sage Yutian. He appeared in the mortal realm. Zhou Xuanji appeared behind Sage Yutian and asked with a deep voice, "Who are you?" He could not see through this person. Impossible. He was already invincible in the mortal realm and was a first-class great emperor. There was only one possibility. This person did not belong to the mortal realm. Sage Yutian turned around and looked at him expressionlessly. "I am the Lord of the Heavenly Hall, Sage Yutian. I control a dozen mortal realms and am immortal. Do you know your crime?" Baidu read the latest chapter of I Have Countless Legendary Sword Claw Book House for free. Chapter 400. The Master of the Heavenly Palace, Sage Yutian. Zhou Xuanji looked at him calmly and asked, "What crime?" If Sage Yutian wanted to kill him or could kill him, he would have done so a long time ago. Their eyes met. He was calm and composed, without the slightest fear. Sage Yutian narrowed his eyes and said, "You obstructed the will of heaven, are you not guilty?" Zhou Xuanji smiled. "I have your mother's sins." He said bluntly, "Xianyuan Zhou forced me to become Tian. I was unwilling, so he wanted to kill me. Can't I resist? Your heavenly palace slaughtered the human race. What do you have to say about that?" He did not have a good impression of the Sky Palace. He even wanted to start a war. However, considering that the northern wilderness region was still recovering and could not afford to fight a war, he could only suppress his anger for now. Sage Yutian shook his head and said, "If it wasn't for me, the northern wilderness humans would have been wiped out long ago. This time, I couldn't protect them, so I sent the Xianyuan clan to wipe them out. You've already become a great emperor, so you can escape this calamity and enter the heavenly hall. I'll nurture you. What do you think?" Zhou Xuanji frowned. This turn of events made him fall into silence. No wonder the ancestors of the human clan wanted to exterminate the human clan of the northern wilderness so much, but they did not do so. So it was because the heavenly palace was resisting? He did not feel grateful because the heavenly palace had already massacred 2 great empires. Next, they were going to massacre the entire human race. Emperor Sword Court would also encounter a calamity. "If I agree, can you protect the northern wilderness region?" Zhou Xuanji asked. He did not want to join the heavenly hall and was just testing the waters. Sage Yutian waved his hand domineeringly and said, "No, apart from you, everyone else must die." He didn't lie, because he was the master of the heavenly palace, and he needed his subordinates to obey him. Zhou Xuanji smiled, "People of different paths cannot make plans together." Sage Yutian didn't get angry. His gaze was calm as he stared at him and said, "If you aren't willing to enter Heavenly Hall and ascend, you will die. It isn't that I want to kill you, but there are too many experts pressuring me from behind. Marquis should have already told you the truth." This guy actually knew about the Marquis. Zhou Xuanji suddenly felt pressured. Could it be that those ancestors were watching him from the upper realm? Sage Yutian saw through his thoughts and said, "That's not the case. I can't enter the mortal world and can't pry into it unless my cultivation surpasses that of a true deity." True God? Was it his status or his realm? Zhou Xuanji had heard of this term before, but he did not have the chance to know the answer. He did not ask. Instead, he was thinking about how many almighties wanted the northern wilderness humans dead. Very soon, an army from the upper realms will descend. The heavenly palace will not be merciful. You will regret it. Although you have become a great emperor, you are still too young. After saying this, Sage Yutian left. He admired Zhou Xuanji's talent, which was why he came down to recruit him. Since they couldn't come to an agreement, then so be it. Zhou Xuanji looked at the bright moon and did not immediately return to Skyfall. He thought for a long time. In the end, he sighed. It's still not enough. In the blink of an eye, half a year had passed since Spirit Sovereign Yan's death. The northern wilderness region had recovered quite a bit, and the number of war-torn areas within the human race had been greatly reduced. However, Because the southern Han royal city and the great Shang Empire had been destroyed, they had become places where bandits roamed. On this day, Zhou Xuanji was teaching Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Zongjian, Lin Changge, Chen Bantian, Ning Zifeng, Meng Tianlang, and Bei Xiao Wangjian. Everyone sat cross-legged together, exchanging their understanding of the sword Dao. Zhou Xuanji listened most of the time and gave some pointers occasionally. His pointers were always accurate and enlightening the others. First-class great emperor, seventh tribulation scattered immortal. His understanding of the sword Dao was far beyond that of Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Zongjian, and the others. After their conversation, Zhou Xuanji told them about his encounter with the Heavenly Hall, the demonic emperor, Wang Ho, and Xiao Hongjun. These trusted aides were already the mainstays of Emperor Sword Court and could rule over a region. Zhou Xuanji was nurturing them to train their courage and knowledge. After he finished speaking, everyone fell into silence. A long while later, Bei Xiao Wangjian asked, Xiao Jinghong, what's your relationship with Xiao Hongjun? Their names are so similar. Xiao Jinghong was speechless and stared at him. Ning Zifeng muttered, if so, even if we destroy the Heavenly Hall, it won't be a good thing. We might be faced with a catastrophe. The Northern Wilderness humans could even destroy the Heavenly Hall. How could those powerhouses be at ease? Yeah, but we're not afraid. Master, don't be afraid. These ancestors are really ungrateful. Forget about the ancestors before Lu Wuji. What's the meaning of the 9 emperors of the Sword's Way? Especially the hegemon Sword Emperor. He's so disgusting. I will never respect him as an ancestor again. The group began discussing among themselves. Lin Changge was the most indignant one. Zhou Xuanji said, there will be a lot of trouble in the future. I don't want you to just talk about Emperor Sword Court's purpose. Cultivate well, strengthen Emperor Sword Court, and protect the Northern Wilderness region. Okay? Of course. Zhao Zongjian patted his chest and said. The others followed suit, each more righteous than the last. Zhou Xuanji was very satisfied. After that, he ordered to continue recruiting disciples. This matter was handled by Xiao Jinghong, Lin Changge, and the other elders. The next day, the news of Emperor Sword Court recruiting disciples spread to the human race. After Zhou Xuanji gave the order, he no longer paid attention to it and began to focus on cultivation. Occasionally, he taught Zhou Shaoxian. Zhou Shaoxian had already grown up. She was youthful and talented. Her cultivation had already reached inner pellet level 6. Among the second-generation disciples, she was the eldest. The eldest senior brother of the second generation, Su Yang, was her #1 follower. As Zhou Xuanji's daughter, no male disciple in Emperor Sword Court dared to touch her. Not to mention that Zhou Xuanji was not around, Jiang Shui, Huang Lianxin, Xiao Jinghong, and the others were around. Who would dare to court death? Even if they accidentally touched Zhou Xiaoxuan's shoulder, the male disciples would be in fear. Although Zhou Shaoxian was a young girl, Zhou Xuanji's influence on her was too great. Unless there was a man more powerful than Zhou Xuanji, she would not be moved. She only wanted to become more powerful. Regarding this, Zhou Xuanji suspected that she was influenced by Xian Xianghua. She was too eager to be powerful. Don't be like Long Proud Hua, who was single for 10,000 years. This day, Emperor Sword Court began recruiting disciples. The entire Skyfall was bustling. Zhou Xuanji, come out and fight. I'm Xianyuan Shenhao, the great emperor of the upper realm. If you lose today's battle, return to the Heavenly Hall with me. A loud cry resounded across the sky, and countless people looked up in shock. Xianyuan Shenhao, who looked like a god of war, appeared in the sky. Millions of people were in an uproar. The great emperor of the upper realm? The Heavenly Hall came so soon. The Sword Emperor cannot be defeated. This person is seeking his own death. Bulsh * T Great Emperor. How come I've never heard of the name Xianyuan Shenhao? Most people snorted disdainfully. * After the tribulation of spirit sovereign Yan, Zhou Xuanji was invincible in the eyes of the northern wilderness. Even if the heavenly hall came, they would not be able to defeat the Sword Emperor. Xianyuan Shenhao stood proudly. But when he heard the discussions below, his mouth twitched and veins popped on his forehead. He was in an extremely bad mood. A bunch of mortals. If not for the fact that this was Zhou Xuanji's territory, he would not allow these mortals to make noise. Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 401. Xianyuan Shenhao, if you lose, you'll have to become my sword slave. Do you dare? Zhou Xuanji's voice sounded out from Skyfall, and millions of people cheered. With the Sword Emperor present, whether it was Emperor Sword Court's disciples or the cultivators who had come to pay their respects, they all felt a sense of security and did not fear Xianyuan Shenhao. Xianyuan Shenhao was so angry that his expression became dark. He would rather die than become Zhou Xuanji's disciple. He shouted angrily, "Cut the crap and come out." A malevolent and mighty halberd appeared in his left hand, and an exaggeratedly long blade appeared in his right hand. With a halberd and a blade, his aura erupted, silencing the heavens and earth. Everyone stared at him, dumbfounded. What a terrifying pressure. Xianyuan Shenhao controlled himself very well, or else just the might alone would be enough to kill hundreds of thousands of people. He did not do this, after all, he owed Zhou Xuanji his life. At this moment, a figure stepped out from the sea of clouds. It was Zhou Xuanji. He wore black clothes, and his black hair casually scattered down his back. His face was like jade, and his eyebrows were sharp like swords. The corners of his lips curled up slightly, revealing an incomparably confident smile. He didn't fear Xianyuan Shenhao at all. He stared at Xianyuan Shenhao and said with a smile, "Is half a year enough for you to make up for the gap between us?" Xianyuan Shenhao frowned, the anger in his heart rising once more. If they were in the upper realm, even 100 Zhou Xuanjis would not be a match for him. This child was too savage. He immediately raised his divine weapon and walked towards Zhou Xuanji. The millions of people on Skyfall held their breaths and watched nervously. Zhou Xuanji raised his right hand and the true Lord Xianxing's sword appeared in his hand. He stared at Xianyuan Shenhao, his gaze becoming sharp. "Father! Defeat him!" Zhou Shaoxian stood on the cliff and shouted. Just when she finished speaking, Zhou Xuanji moved suddenly. Xianyuan Shenhao's pupils shrank. What incredible speed! Just as he was about to make a move, a terrifying pressure enveloped him, causing him to be unable to move. What's going on? Emperor's might? Impossible. Xianyuan Shenhao revealed a look of horror. Waves surged in his heart. Puchi. True Lord Xianxing's sword pierced through his throat and blood flowed out from the back of his neck. Zhou Xuanji stood in front of him with a cold expression. You have lost. Xianyuan Shenhao's eyes widened and beads of cold sweat appeared on his forehead, and his body slightly trembled. All the spectators were stunned. He had thought that it would be a fierce battle. He didn't expect it to be an instant kill. The Sword Emperor was ridiculously strong. Thunder clouds rolled and countless bolts of lightning interweaved. A stone tablet that was thousands of feet tall stood in the middle of the thunderclouds. Many names were engraved on it, and from the bottom to the top, the characters grew larger and larger. The stone tablet shook violently as if it would shatter at any moment. Two black-robed men stood in front of the stone monument, looking up. A new name will appear on the Great Emperor's stele. I wonder what this person's ranking is. The two of them conversed softly. At the top of the All Heavens Great Emperor's stele, the top 100 names were arranged in a row. The stone tablet suddenly stopped shaking. The 12th name suddenly dropped, causing all the names below it to drop as well. Then, a new name appeared in the 12th place. Zhou Xuanji. The two black-robed men were frightened and cried out in alarm. Number 12. First grade Great Sovereign. Even the peerless hegemon sword emperor 10,000 years ago was only number 53. Where did this person come from? The two of them could no longer remain calm. They cast their spells and spread the news. The All-Heaven's Great Emperor Steel was a manifestation of the heavenly law. It recorded the talent rankings of all living beings. The names on the steel were all great emperors. The top 30 were all first-grade great emperors. Xianyuan Shenhao was ranked 54, just below the hegemon sword emperor. It had been 50,000 years since a first-grade great sovereign was born. On the peak of Skyfall. Ever since he defeated Xianyuan Shenhao, Zhou Xuanji forced him to stay to accompany Haotian Sec's Thunder Demon sovereign Zhang Quanglan. On this day, Zhou Xuanji celebrated his 78th birthday while cultivating. Analyzed that the sword owner has reached 78 years old. Gotcha started. Ding. Congratulations, the sword owner obtained, gold, brilliant soul sword, god slaying, 9 flame chimera demon sword. He opened his eyes abruptly, and a brilliant light flashed in his eyes. God slaying legendary sword. They were finally out. The information of the 2 legendary swords appeared before his eyes: sword name, brilliant soul sword grade, gold description, a brilliant light that can suppress ghosts. A magnificent sword, a swordsman's favorite. Sword name, 9 flame chimera demon sword grade, god slaying description. The 9 flame chimera demon is an ancient giant demon that contains 9 types of intense flames. It is extremely domineering and invincible. Its soul is transformed into a demon sword, and only great emperors can wield it. Only great emperors can wield it? Zhou Xuanji was delighted. He was now a first-class great emperor. Didn't that mean he could wield it directly? He immediately took out the 9 flame chimera demon sword. In that instant, a fiery light shone on his face, and his pupils dilated. It was a crimson flame longsword. The blade was 4 fingers wide, and there were flame runes carved on its edges. The entire blade was burning with intense flames and had 3 colors. The bottom was white, the middle was red, and the outside was crimson. The hilt was covered with scales, and holding it, he could feel a cool sensation. Kill! 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 A low roar sounded in Zhou Xuanji's ears, shaking his mind. He immediately stored the sword in the supreme storage. Such a domineering god-slaying legendary sword. Holding this sword, Zhou Xuanji felt an intense desire to destroy, as though everything in the world could not withstand a single blow. Fortunately, with the suppression of the supreme legendary sword system, this desire to destroy would not devour Zhou Xuanji's heart. Very good. With this sword, I will kill as many as the heavenly palace comes. Zhou Xuanji smiled in satisfaction. However, other than the heavenly palace, he had many more enemies. He still had to work hard on his cultivation. At this moment, Liuwu Demon Wolf's voice came from the foot of the mountain. Master, Great Shang's Emperor Yang Xindi has brought thousands of merchants to pay his respects. Should we accept them? Yang Xindi? Zhou Xuanji replied with squinted eyes, make the necessary arrangements. Do not be negligent. Yes. After Liuwu Demon Wolf left, Zhou Xuanji fell into reminiscence. Yang Xindi recognized him before he ruled the world, and the two of them were old friends. It was a pity that Great Shang was already destroyed. He suddenly thought of Great Shang's top beauty, Su Xianxian. He wondered how she was doing. He did not feel sad and continued to cultivate. 3 days later, he met with Yang Xindi and the others. The collapse of the empire caused Yang Xindi and Yang Zhongtian to become much older. After some discussion, they officially joined Emperor Sword Court. Yang Zhongtian's strategy was unparalleled, and he was famous among the 7 great empires. He was just like Guojia and Jia Su in the 3 kingdoms in his previous life. Daoya old man admired him very much, so he personally made arrangements for him. Yang Xindi was once the son of heaven and could help Emperor Sword Court develop. However, Emperor Sword Court was a sect of the Way of the Sword. If they did not have outstanding way of the sword cultivation, it would be hard for them to convince the masses. Time passed. Half a month passed. Dao Seeker suddenly looked for Zhou Xuanji, and the two of them came to a place where there was no one around to talk. Zhou Xuanji noticed that he did not look well, as though he had just experienced a huge setback. Just as he was about to speak, the man in the woven rush raincoat appeared out of nowhere and spoke first. Something bad has happened. If you want to know what kind of godly swords there are, you can pay attention to it. There will be an update on the godly swords at 6 p.m. More story power rankings and Easter eggs can also be found in the WeChat. Com. Wonderful bookstore com. Chapter 402. Is your business more urgent than mine? Dao Seeker glared at the man in the raincoat and said angrily. He was not surprised at all why the man in the woven rush raincoat was looking for Zhou Xuanji. The man in the woven rush raincoat said angrily, "Aren't you just Xiao Hongjuan's matter? I have already informed the Sword Emperor." Dao Seeker ignored him and said to Zhou Xuanji hurriedly, "Ji Xian has already reincarnated and turned into someone called Su Han. Xiao Hongjun forced me to look for him, but I could not find him. However, I discovered something. Ji Xian descended to the mortal realm under the orders of a powerhouse, and his goal was to exterminate the human race. Ji Xian is not simple. He is very famous in the upper worlds. Even Xiao Hongjun wants to subdue him." Zhou Xuanji frowned. Suhan. Why did he feel like he had heard this name before? Why do you know these people from the upper realms so well? Zhou Xuanji asked curiously. He felt that these two were hiding many things from him. Dao Seeker explained, "We are tribulation executives. No matter who descends to the mortal world, we will be able to sense it. Over the years, we have met many acquaintances who have descended to the mortal world. We have talked about Xiao Hongjun and Ji Xian." The man in the raincoat interrupted him. "Ji Xian's reincarnation will take several hundred years for him to mature, so there's nothing to worry about. I've divined that the descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline is related to you, because his fate is constantly changing and disappearing. In this world, only your fate cannot be divined." Zhou Xuanji narrowed his eyes and asked, "You mean that the descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline is by my side? It's very likely that he's from Emperor Sword Court?" The man in the raincoat nodded. After learning of this possibility, he was also very shocked. How could there be such a coincidence in this world? However, now that Emperor Sword Court had become stronger, such a situation was indeed possible. Dao Seeker snorted coldly. The descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline needs time to rise. Moreover, how could he be a greater threat than Ji Xian? You should know who Ji Xian is. He is a first-class great sovereign with unparalleled talent. When Sage Yutian banished him to the mortal world, I already felt that something was wrong. So it was to deceive people. First-grade great emperor? Zhou Xuanji raised his brow. He felt that Dao Seeker's words did not hold water. Was there a need for such a cover-up? Or did Sage Yutian have a deeper plan? Dao Seeker and the man in the woven rush raincoat began arguing, which gave Zhou Xuanji a headache. Rumble, the sound of thunder suddenly rang out, startling the three of them. Rumbling thunder clouds gathered above Skyfall. Looking out, the sky was also filled with thunder clouds, covering tens of thousands of miles and perhaps even further. A terrifying heavenly might descended, causing everyone to tremble. Qiu Dao's expression changed, and he said in shock, "Could it be, Heavenly Palace?" Zhou Xuanji looked at the sky, his gaze cold. The day had finally come. The Heavenly Palace would definitely not give him the time to grow after he became a grade 1 great sovereign. As expected, in less than a year, the Heavenly Hall descended to the mortal world and started the war. At the foot of Skyfall, Xianyuan Shenhao, who was dressed in simple cloth clothes, looked up with a grave expression. Zhang Quanglan, who was chopping wood at the side, wiped the sweat off his forehead and said with a smile, "Brother Shenhao, stop looking. The court lord has probably made a breakthrough again. Follow me and chop wood properly. You'll find that this kind of life is quite interesting. Watching the grass grow in summer, watching the leaves fall in autumn, watching the snow fall in winter, watching all living things grow in spring. Isn't life like this? Living from death, going around in circles, fighting for a lifetime, who can escape death? He smiled like an old man who had seen through the world of mortals and returned to his native land. Xianyuan Shenhao ignored him but stared at the billowing thunderclouds in the sky. They're here, he mumbled. He had stayed in Skyfall for some time and found this place quite interesting. Moreover, he had not defeated Zhou Xuanji yet, so he did not hope for the Heavenly Hall to descend. Because he knew that once the Heavenly Hall invaded, Zhou Xuanji and the Northern Wilderness humans would die for sure. Other than the Heavenly Hall, there would surely be powerful cultivators from other factions. Zhou Xuanji, I'm the great commander of the Heavenly Hall, Li Min. I want to see what you can do to stop the Heavenly Hall. A loud cry resounded across the clouds. The thunderclouds on the horizon parted, and beams of golden light shone out. Many majestic figures appeared above the sea of clouds, all of them wearing shining divine armors, looking mighty and domineering. At a glance, there were countless soldiers from the Heavenly Hall. A gigantic figure that was thousands of meters tall appeared on the horizon like a giant that created the world. He held a gigantic sword in his hand that was even larger than the mountains beside him. His back was facing the blazing sun, making it so that no one could see his true appearance. Anyone who saw such a scene would be afraid. Gather the entire court. Formation. Su Yang drew his sword and roared with all his might. He was not afraid but excited instead. I can finally show my power. Dao Seeker said with a solemn expression, the real catastrophe is here. Zhou Xuanji walked past him and leaped into the air, ascending into the sky. The sun-devouring Tiango sword and dream-devouring heavenly martial devil rinsing appeared in his hands. The Emperor's Way thousand-hand sword Buddha materialized and rose from the ground with Zhou Xuanji on its head. Seeing Zhou Xuanji, all the disciples of Emperor Sword Court were excited. After a new round of recruitment, Emperor Sword Court had more than 1.5 million people. Most of them were odd-job disciples. The Sword Emperor who transcends the past and present indeed. So domineering. Yang Zhongtian stood by the cliff and sighed in amazement as he stroked his long beard. Yang Xindi, who was beside him, was silent. His eyes were burning with passion. Lin Changge, Ning Zifeng, Xiao Jinghong, Meng Tianlang, Chen Bantian, Zhao Zongjian, and the others drew their swords and landed on the thousand-hand sword Buddha's shoulder. Roar, a domineering dragon roar shook the heavens and the earth. Next, Finyu Dragon King coiled around Skyfall and rose into the sky. The dragon's body was like a mountain range, majestic and majestic. Zhou Xiaoqi turned into a fire qilin. His shoulders were 500 meters tall, and his hooves were covered in flames. He levitated behind Skyfall. The Heavenly Hall is seeking death. What should Emperor Sword Court do? Zhou Xuanji said. His voice reverberated across the heavens and earth. Although his tone was indifferent, it made all the disciples of Emperor Sword Court's blood boil. Kill with the sword. 1.5 million disciples drew their swords and roared furiously. Their voices gathered together, and it was so majestic that it shook the mountains and rivers. Sword Chi soared into the sky and dispersed the thunderclouds around Skyfall. Blocking a chariot with your bare hands. Xianyuan Shenhao shook his head and mumbled. He noticed that Zhang Quanglan was still laughing and said unpleasantly, Trash, you are going to die soon. Why are you still laughing? Zhang Quanglan waved his hand and continued chopping firewood with a smile. Xianyuan Shenhao was silent. Zhou Xuanji, you are powerful indeed. But you are the only powerful person in the Northern Wilderness region. Can you protect everyone? Divine General Li Min's voice came again. His tone was filled with mockery. Millions of the Heavenly Hall's army have descended to every corner of the human race. Let's see how you will save the world with your sword. Boys, kill. Divine General Li Min roared furiously. A few thousand meters tall, he charged over from the horizon with his sword. He was unstoppable, destroying mountains and splashing lakes. Kill. The Heavenly Hall's army roared as well. Like a torrential storm, they descended from the sky and charged toward Skyfall. Zhou Xuanji snorted coldly. Countless sword shadows appeared in the dark sky. There were so many that they were as numerous as the stars in the night sky. Primordial Chaos Sword Shadow. Calm. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 403. Millions of sword shadows levitated around the thousand-hand sword Buddha. The scene was extremely majestic, and everyone on Emperor Sword Court's side was in awe. What kind of mastery of the sword's way was required to cast such a sword technique? The sword shadows connected and gathered into mountains and rivers, forming a primordial chaos. Zhou Xuanji focused his eyes, and the primordial chaos sword shadow charged toward the Heavenly Hall's army. Swoosh! 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 The millions of sword shadows moved in unison with great momentum. The powerful gale that they generated was about to sweep up the forest below. The Heavenly Hall's side was shocked too, but it was too late for them to retreat. Soon, the primordial chaos sword shadow charged into the Heavenly Hall's army. Explosions occurred one after another. The Heavenly Hall's soldiers were blasted into pieces by the sword shadows, and their souls dispersed. Powerful. Domineering. Emperor Sword Court's disciples' blood boiled. If not for the fact that they were in a battle, they would have knelt down to Zhou Xuanji immediately. Boom! Divine General Li Min charged over furiously, crushing the mountains along the way. He swung his giant sword and blocked the primordial chaos sword shadow, giving the Heavenly Hall's army a chance to breathe. They made a detour and charged toward Skyfall. Zhou Xuanji merged into the thousand-hand sword Buddha's body. Next, the thousand-hand sword Buddha opened its eyes, and two rays of golden radiance swept across the land. Facing the ferocious Divine General Li Min, the thousand-hand sword Buddha grew 1,000 arms and charged forward with its sword. The two peerless giants fought fiercely in the wilderness. The two forces clashed like two torrents, and people died in an instant. The Heavenly Hall's power was restricted by the heavenly law. But overall, they were still more powerful than Emperor Sword Court. Zhou Xuanji decided to end the battle quickly. He would kill Divine General Li Min first before destroying the Heavenly Hall's army. The thousand-hand sword Buddha came up to Divine General Li Min and slashed with its 1,000 swords, forcing Divine General Li Min to retreat. His power was restricted to ninth tribulation scattered immortal by the heavenly law. Although he could still dominate the world, he was at a disadvantage against Zhou Xuanji. How can it be? This guy's power. Divine General Li Min's majestic face darkened, and he was horrified in his heart. Zhou Xuanji drew on the power of the heavens and the earth, causing his power to explosively increase. At the same time, he used universal attraction, sucking him in. An earth-shattering explosion resounded. Divine General Li Min's shoulders were slashed, and the terrifying force forced him to kneel on the ground. The ground cracked and dust flew into the air. The heavenly halls of the divine. However, the people from the heavenly palace were shocked. Impossible. General Li Min is at a disadvantage? Damn it, no wonder he's ranked 12th on the Great Emperor's Steel. Everyone be careful. The northern wilderness humans must be eliminated. Let's fight. Although the heavenly palace's soldiers were frightened, they did not show any fear. Instead, they erupted with even stronger willpower. The surrounding 10,000 miles had turned into a battlefield. The disciples of the Emperor's Sword Court controlled their swords to fight, traversing the battlefield wantonly. Lin Chang'e and Ning Zifeng were very domineering. Both of them wielded the ancestral dragon divine sword and transformed into ancestral dragons. Chen Bantian and Meng Tianlang weren't any weaker. The 10,000-year princes were getting stronger as they fought, and their eyes were filled with excitement and madness. Xiao Jinghong activated the Emperor's Wei thousand-hand sword Buddha. Although it was only a few dozen meters tall and was not as exaggerated as Zhou Xuanji's thousand-hand sword Buddha, it was still powerful. No one could stop him. Zhou Xuanji suddenly deactivated the thousand-hand sword Buddha state, and 9 sword souls appeared behind him. The sword souls slashed out continuously. Li Min instinctively raised his sword to block, but it was useless. The sword light flashed, and most people subconsciously closed their eyes. Li Min opened his eyes wide. His body was blasted apart and turned into countless sparks. Zhou Xuanji focused his eyes, and the true Lord Xianqing's sword appeared above his head. Swoosh! Ranged sword propelling. Li Min's soul was hidden among the sparks. He could not dodge in time and was penetrated by the true Lord Xianqing's sword. How can it be? Li Min opened his eyes wide and looked at Zhou Xuanji in disbelief. He was defeated. And he lost so quickly. He still had many powerful divine abilities that he did not have time to use. Zhou Xuanji appeared in front of him out of nowhere. The 9-sword purple Tai Chi diagram appeared on his forehead. Nothing is impossible. I'm more powerful than you, he said coldly. After he spoke, he absorbed Li Min's soul with the Tianxia map. He turned around, and all the legendary swords appeared around him. More than 100 legendary swords were surrounded by dragon-shaped sword chi. 10,000 sword dragon incantation. Kill! He cried loudly. All the legendary swords dashed out with extreme speed and killed the Heavenly Palace's soldiers one after another. No one could stop them. His soul had already transformed, and his mental control was extremely powerful. None of the Emperor's Sword Court's disciples were accidentally injured. Hundreds of swords shot out at the same time, and the sound of air being torn could be heard. When the divine sword pierced through the disciples of the Emperor's Sword Court and killed the enemy, it moved on to the next enemy. All of them widened their eyes in shock. So fast. Meng Tianlang couldn't help but gulp as he looked at the godly swords that were flying in all directions. He was too strong. Even if the upper realm's heavenly hall descended, it would not stand a chance against Zhou Xuanji. Was becoming a great emperor really that amazing? His eyes burned with fighting spirit. Run! The commander is dead. We've lost. Impossible. How can he be so strong? Could it be that he is not restricted by the heavenly Tao? Why is this happening? With Li Min's death, the legendary swords wreaked havoc. The heavenly hall's army collapsed in an instant. All of them fled in a hurry, but Zhou Xuanji would not let them go. The massacre continued. At the same time, the heavenly hall's army arrived in various parts of the northern wilderness region. The divine generals and spiritual venerables led their troops and slaughtered the humans wantonly. Miserable screams filled the desolate North's land, and blood almost dyed the whole country red. Although Zhou Xuanji won, it would be difficult for him to protect the human world alone. All the sacred grounds and the 5 great dynasties took action. The flames of war spread across the world. Boom! Boom! 2 beams of light descended from the sky and landed on the beach, splashing up the seawater. 2 domineering men walked out from the powerful beams of light. One of them wore a heavy and sinister-looking black armor. He had a pair of dragon horns in his black hair, and his face was covered in black scales. His eyes were green in color. The other man was dressed like a scholar. His blue robe danced in the wind, and he looked handsome. He held a folding fan in his hand. The blue-robed scholar shook his head with a smile. I didn't expect Li Min to die so quickly. The heavenly hall is useless indeed. The black-scaled man said with a deep voice, he's a first-class great emperor ranked 12th on the great emperor's stele after all. From what they said, they were obviously not from the heavenly hall. Their words even seemed to belittle the heavenly hall. Qin Mahuai, the the Divine Lord allowed you to maintain your cultivation at First Revolution Golden Immortal. Don't die. Within 3 days, I want you to bring Zhou Xuanji's head to me. The blue-robed scholar instructed as he looked toward the horizon. Qin Mahuai frowned and asked, "It's not a problem to kill him. What are you going to do?" The blue-robed scholar waved his fan and laughed coldly. "I'm going to settle the score with an old friend." After that, he turned into a series of afterimages and dashed toward the horizon. Qin Mahuai thought about it for a while before he turned around and walked toward the northern wilderness region. He smiled cruelly and mumbled to himself, "First-class great emperor? Hee, I haven't killed a first-class great emperor before. Zhou Xuanji, I will let you die a painful death." Come. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 404. Skyfall. Smoke filled the air for tens of thousands of miles. The forests around Skyfall were in ruins, and the mountains and rivers were in ruins. There were corpses everywhere. There were disciples of the Emperor's sword court and soldiers of the heavenly palace. Zhou Xuanji sheathed his sword. In less than 20 breaths of time, he had used the 10,000 sword dragon incantation to kill millions of the heavenly hall's soldiers. Even though there were some who managed to escape, they were no longer a threat. He looked back at Skyfall and frowned. He was hesitating. Should they go and help the human race? If he left, would enemies launch a sneak attack on Skyfall? Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Congjian, Lin Changge, and the others began to clean up the battlefield. Daoya Old Man suddenly flew in front of him and said with a serious expression, "The calamity that we predicted might be coming soon." He was reminding Zhou Xuanji. He was not afraid of his own death, but he was worried about Jiang Shui and her mother. Zhou Xuanji's talent was incredibly powerful, and if he became demonic because of his wife and daughter's death, that would be terrifying. Zhou Xuanji understood what he meant but was still a little hesitant. What should I do? Facing Zhou Xuanji's question, Daoya Old Man fell into silence. Decades ago, Zhou Xuanji would often ask him all sorts of questions. After he became number 1 in the world, he no longer asked him such questions. Daoya Old Man sighed and said, "Gather everyone and discuss." Zhou Xuanji nodded. Half a day later, all the elders of the Emperor's Sword Guild gathered in the pavilion at the top of the mountain. Emperor's Sword Court had lost nearly 100,000 disciples in this battle. Even though Zhou Xuanji had acted quickly, so many of them had still died. The difference in strength between the two sides was simply too great. After Zhou Xuanji expressed his hesitation, everyone fell silent. He looked at Jiang Shui. He was most worried about her. No lofty sentiments or lofty ambitions could make her a worry-free life. Zhou Shaoxian clenched her fists and said, "Father, don't worry about us, go and save the humans. The disciples of Emperor Sword Court definitely have relatives outside. If the human race is destroyed and only Emperor Sword Court is left, how long can they last? Don't worry about me. I'll take care of myself." She was not sad, but excited. In her heart, her father was an indomitable hero who took on the responsibility of protecting the human race. Zhou Xuanji rolled his eyes at her and said, "Can you protect your mother?" Zhou Shaoxian immediately patted her chest and said proudly, "Of course I can." The next second, her smile froze. "Wait a minute. Protect my mother? What about me?" Jiang Shui held Zhou Xuanji's hand and said with a gentle smile, "Go, we must unite the human race, or else our situation will only become more and more difficult." The others nodded. Although they did not want to die, they understood the stakes. Zhou Xuanji immediately got up and turned into a stream of sword light, disappearing into the horizon. Xiao Jinghong swept the others with his gaze and said, "We must be prepared for battle. We can't distract Master, and we can't disappoint him." Chen Bantian clenched his fists and chuckled. This is a great opportunity for the Yellow Dragon royal bloodline's 10,000-year princes to rise. Meng Tianlang glared at him, meaning to say, with me around, you want to rise? The others had their own thoughts and did not respond. Zhou Xuanji relied on the power of the heavens and earth to directly soar into the human race's territory. The sounds of killing, crying, fighting, cursing, and so on, all kinds of sounds entered his ears. He opened his eyes. The city in front of him was filled with the flames of war. There were people fighting everywhere. To be more precise, it was the heavenly palace that was slaughtering the people of the northern wilderness. He immediately summoned all his divine swords and turned the tide of the battle. He didn't even look back as he flew deeper into the human territory. 10 breaths later, the legendary swords returned to his side. In the ruined city, the survivors were stunned. It's the Sword Emperor. The Sword Emperor saved us. I knew the Sword Emperor would not abandon us. Damn, why didn't he come earlier? We can only blame ourselves for being too weak. The Sword Emperor has shouldered too much. Don't push the blame to him. Damn heavens, I want to go against the heavens. The night passed. When the sun rose, Zhou Xuanji had already saved 73 cities. He encountered many dead cities along the way. In just one day, the northern wilderness's human population was reduced by at least 30%. Or even more. Zhou Xuanji's heart was heavy. He could only try his best to save them. Soon, he came to Great Zhou. Great Zhou had already lost 2/3 of its territory, and there were countless casualties. He rode on the 100 or so legendary swords as though he was riding on a river of swords. Everywhere he passed, the Heavenly Hall's army perished. Fortunately, Zhou Qingxin and the royal family were not in danger yet. In the eyes of the Heavenly Hall, the royal family was just an ordinary person, and there was no need to target them. In fact, the Heavenly Hall did not suffer many casualties in the battle against the northern wilderness. Zhou Xuanji did not stop and continued flying toward Great Qin. Suddenly, he stopped. Because he bumped into two familiar faces. It was Biyao Yisan and Feng Gyul. The two were resting by the riverside. Biyao Yisan was as elegant as ever. However, Feng Gyul looked very strange. His body was wrapped in white cloth, and only his head was exposed. The two saw Zhou Xuanji and the majestic river of swords. Oh no! Biyao Yisan's expression changed. He looked away instinctively and did not dare to look at Zhou Xuanji. Feng Gyul snorted coldly, looking quite displeased. Every time he saw Zhou Xuanji, he regretted it. He regretted not trying to capture Zhou Xuanji instead of this useless great emperor in front of him. Zhou Xuanji looked at Biyao Yisan and said, "Did you descend to the mortal realm to destroy your descendants?" Having heard this, Biyao Yisan was like a cat whose tail was stepped on. He jumped up and cried out furiously, "You dare to question this emperor? If this emperor was so cowardly and heartless, why did I descend to the mortal realm? Have you seen this emperor kill anyone?" Zhou Xuanji thought about it and realized that it was true. This fellow had never killed a mortal before. Even if it was an enemy, he had never killed them. Biyao Yisan harumphed and said, "This emperor advises you to give up. Don't waste your time. You should have limitless glory and should not be dragged down by these mortals. You've already done well and are not inferior to those famous figures." Boom! A terrifying figure descended from the sky and landed on the other side of the river. His body burned with demonic flames and his aura was incredibly majestic. He was 15 meters tall and his thick black armor made him look like a demonic beast, giving off formless roars. Biyao Yisan's expression fell and he cursed, as expected, nothing good comes out of encountering this boy. Even this fellow came. He did not say anything and turned to run. Swish! A black demonic arrow landed in front of him, giving him a big fright and causing him to quickly stop. Feng Gyul asked anxiously, "Who is he?" Biyao Yisan turned and sighed as he said, "Qin Mahuai, are you really going to act against this emperor?" Qin Mahuai cruelly laughed and said, "Great Emperor Heartless, it's best if you don't go anywhere. Someone wants to see you, but before that, he looked up at Zhou Xuanji and coldly laughed as he said, "You're Zhou Xuanji? You don't look like much, but since you have the talent of a first-class great emperor, I'll do my best. Are you prepared to suffer?" A look of jealousy flashed in the depths of his eyes. Zhou Xuanji felt quite confused. Did I kill your father? What a bad temper. Chapter 405. True God. Zhou Xuanji frowned. He had heard this term again. He looked towards Qin Mahuai. This fellow has a strength that surpasses a great tribulation scattered immortal. What was above a great tribulation scattered immortal? Qin Mahuai flipped his right hand, and then an enormous blade appeared in his hand. This blade was 15 m long, like a crescent moon, completely pitch black, and suffused with a cold glow. He slowly rose into the air with a sinister smile on his face. The more he looked at Zhou Xuanji, the more jealous he became. Don't you know what's above a great tribulation scattered immortal? Qin Mahuai laughed coldly and said, Then I'll tell you. Above the 9th tribulation bodiless immortal is the 10th revolution golden immortal. Even though you possess the aptitude of the first grade, it's a pity that you haven't seen a vaster sky. Qi nurturing, foundation establishment, enlightening, inner core, spirit spring, nascent soul, astral projection, spirit refinement, Mahayana. 9th tribulation bodiless immortal. 10th revolution golden immortal. Next would be the true gods. Or could it be that there was a gap between the realms? Zhou Xuanji thought about it and felt a little displeased. This guy's tone was really arrogant. He stood on the Sword River and looked down at Qin Mahuai. You are a 10th transformation golden immortal? Qin Mahuai smiled in disdain. Do I need to be a 10th revolution golden immortal to kill you? Boom! He charged toward Zhou Xuanji and slashed with his saber. The two were less than 100 meters apart. Zhou Xuanji swung his sword instinctively. Dang! Zhou Xuanji was sent flying and landed on a mountain 1,000 meters away. His body was embedded into the mountain, and his swords fell to the ground. Bai Hao Isin covered his face and said, as expected, the difference between a great tribulation scattered immortal and a first revolution golden immortal is insurmountable. He had personally witnessed how powerful Zhou Xuanji was. It could even be said that he surpassed great tribulation scattered immortals. Unfortunately, he was still no match for a first revolution golden immortal. Feng Qiu was dumbfounded. Wasn't the difference in strength a little too great? Qin Mahuai's demonic flames billowed as he flew towards Zhou Xuanji, a look of arrogance and disdain on his face. A first-grade great emperor that had yet to mature was only so-so. Compared to that person, this kid was not worthy to be a first-grade great sovereign. At this moment, Zhou Xuanji slowly stood up from the cliff, and 9 sword souls condensed behind him, giving off a powerful light and giving off a divine and domineering aura. His face was expressionless, and a 9-sword purple Tai Chi diagram appeared on his forehead. His eyes also turned purple, and his black hair fluttered slightly. His entire aura suddenly changed. Xiao! Xiao! Swoosh! One divine sword after another flew in front of him, but Qin Mahuai did not stop them. Zhou Xuanji twisted his neck and said, You black gecko demon, did anyone tell you about the consequences of angering me? Oh, no, because they're all dead. He held the sun-devouring Tiango sword and the dream-devouring true martial devil-sweeping sword in his hand, and he stepped on the river of swords as he approached Qin Mahuai. So what if he was a first revolution golden immortal? It was only one level higher than a 9 tribulation bodiless immortal. Zhou Xuanji's eyes flashed with battle intent. His body turned golden as he charged out with the 9 sword souls. Qin Mahuai raised his saber and slashed out. In that moment, an eerie wind blew, rushing towards Zhou Xuanji from all directions. It turned into countless wind blades, and each wind blade was dozens of feet long, looking as if it could tear the sky apart. Zhou Xuanji used the trisource vein severing sword ferociously. His sword she exploded and shattered all the wind blades around him. He took 5 steps in succession to arrive before Qin Mahuai, and then his swords danced about violently while his attacks were fierce and overbearing. Moreover, his sword was swift to the point it created countless afterimages. Qin Mahuai easily blocked each of Zhou Xuanji's swords, seeming to be at ease. Boom! A bolt of lightning blasted down, landing on the ground and blasting open a scorched hole. Rocks flew everywhere as heavenly might spread throughout the heavens and earth. As Qin Mahuai's aura became more and more powerful, the heavenly might also became stronger. The mountains trembled and the earth trembled as countless cracks covered the ground. Biyao Yisan and Feng Qiu both retreated. Looking at this apocalyptic scene, Feng Qiu gulped and asked, "We're not going to run?" Biyao Yisan bitterly laughed and said, "We can't run. A first revolution golden immortal can see through the entire mortal realm. Rather than suffering, it's better to just surrender." Feng Qiu looked at him in confusion and asked, "He wants to capture you. Wasn't this fellow very arrogant and did not submit to anyone?" "That's right, capture, not kill," Biyao Yisan said as he shrugged. Hearing this, Feng Qiu's eyes widened, and he asked carefully, "After you're captured, what will happen to the northern wilderness human race?" "We'll all die." "What about me? You're not from the northern wilderness? You're not going to save me? This emperor has been captured." "Damn you," Feng Qiu almost went berserk, but he was punched to the ground by Biyao Yisan. He said disdainfully, "You dare to speak rudely to this emperor." He turned his gaze to the battle in the distance, and a trace of shock flashed in his eyes. Zhou Xuanji had not ascended yet, and yet he could fight against a first revolution golden immortal. Just what was this boy's limit? Zhou Xuanji unleashed his dual sword wills, and the 9 sword souls behind him continuously shot out. His power and speed gradually increased. Qin Mahuai fought very easily, and he noticed this. "Your talent is indeed incredible, but it's a pity that there's an insurmountable gap between you and a first revolution golden immortal." He condescendingly laughed, and the smile on his face became crazed. A first-class great emperor. If he could kill him, his name would definitely shake the upper realm. Zhou Xuanji did not stop attacking, but he slightly frowned. He immediately used the power of the heavens and earth and turned into an ancestor dragon as he slammed into Qin Mahuai. Qin Mahuai was caught off guard and was sent crashing into the forest. He charged along the ground with unstoppable momentum. They were incredibly fast, and they smashed through mountains. Soon, they broke through Great Chen's border wall and continued onwards. The cultivators and commoners along the way were all dumbfounded. Zhou Xuanji had turned into an ancestor dragon, and his dragon body was nearly 3,000 meters long. He was incredibly massive and looked like a mountain range. He wantonly twisted and turned, looking incredibly domineering. Qin Mahuai bent his legs and stomped into the ground, using all of his strength to resist the ancestor dragon. His strength was not just a little bit stronger than Zhou Xuanji's, and he quickly suppressed Zhou Xuanji with brute force. The 5-clawed golden dragon dissipated, and Zhou Xuanji descended from the sky. He slashed out with his 2 swords, and the 9 sword souls behind him continuously slashed out. Sword light flashed under the sky, and a massive explosion sounded out. The ground in the surrounding 1,000 meters collapsed, trees were uprooted, and lake water flew everywhere. Clang! Qin Mahuai blocked 2 swords with his saber, and he arrogantly laughed. "Zhou Xuanji, is this all you've got?" A savage light appeared in his eyes, and the demonic flames on his body suddenly flared out, causing Zhou Xuanji to quickly retreat. Demonic arrows flew out from within the demonic flames, shooting towards Zhou Xuanji like a wild gale. He did his best to defend and was not injured. However, at that moment, Qin Mahuai suddenly appeared behind him. His left hand grabbed Zhou Xuanji's collar and threw him hundreds of meters away, smashing him into the ground. In the next second, Qin Mahuai spun and slashed out. Zhou Xuanji, who had appeared behind him, could not dodge in time, and a large gash appeared on his abdomen, from which blood spurted out. Too slow. Qin Mahuai savagely laughed. Seeing Zhou Xuanji in pain, he felt quite excited. He stomped down on Zhou Xuanji's chest and sent him flying. Despicable, Zhou Xuanji gritted his teeth and did his best to stabilize himself. However, Qin Mahuai's strength was simply too great. A palm suddenly pressed against his back, helping him dissipate some of the force. Soon, he stopped on a hill 10,000 meters away. He looked back and saw that the person helping him was Devil Emperor Dugu. Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 406. He's a first revolution golden immortal. You're not his match. Devil Emperor Dugu said expressionlessly as he stared at Qin Mahuai. Although he did not look at Zhou Xuanji, he felt extremely complicated. For years ago, he thought that Zhou Xuanji was dead. Who would have thought that 3 years later, this brat would become a great emperor, annihilating the Heavenly Law army in one fell swoop and killing Spirit Sovereign Yen. This was simply unbelievable. So this time, he decided to protect Zhou Xuanji no matter what. He saw limitless potential in Zhou Xuanji. Back off, I'll help you repel him. Devil Emperor Dugu took a step forward and said in a deep voice. Zhou Xuanji looked at him in confusion and asked, You only have 6 tribulation scattered immortal cultivation, how can you defeat him? 6th tribulation bodiless immortal. How long has it been since he was resurrected? His cultivation base had almost caught up to him. The heavenly Tao was unfair. Zhou Xuanji was envious in his heart. Devil Emperor Dugu replied, I can't defeat him, but I can find some helpers. As he spoke, he raised his hands and prepared to form a hand seal. But Zhou Xuanji stretched out his hand to stop him and walked in front of him. I haven't lost yet. After saying this, Zhou Xuanji stepped forward. What a joke. How could he allow more beings from the upper realm to descend to the mortal world? He didn't want to owe Devil Emperor Dugu too many favors. Oh, I was wondering who it was. So it's the famous Devil Emperor Dugu. If the divine cliff knows that you're still alive, will they descend to the mortal world to capture you? Qin Mahuai flew over with his massive saber in hand. Not only did the devilish flames on his body not diminish, they burned even brighter. Devil Monarch Dugu was expressionless. Qin Mahuai, don't you think it's beneath your status to stir up trouble in the lower realm? Qin Mahuai grinned and said, You might not know this, but this kid's ranking on the Great Emperor Steel is higher than yours. Devil Emperor Dugu remained unfazed. He was indeed not as talented as Zhou Xuanji. This kid could probably be ranked in the top 20 of the Great Emperor Steel. Zhou Xuanji leaped into the air and raised his right hand. The 9-flame Chimera Demon sword appeared in his hand. The power of heaven and earth fused into his body, and his eyes turned purple again. The 9-sword purple Tai Chi diagram on his forehead burned with purple flames, as if it would fly out at any moment. Qin Mahuai glanced at the sword in his hand and sneered. You want to rely on a sword to defeat me? This sword was clearly extraordinary. But no matter how extraordinary it was, it could not give Zhou Xuanji power that surpassed the mortal realm. Zhou Xuanji held the 9-flame Chimera Demon sword, and legendary swords appeared beneath his feet, forming a river of swords. The swords at the back flew to the front, and the cycle continued as he walked towards Qin Mahuai. This sword is called the 9-flame Nightmare, have you heard of it? Zhou Xuanji asked calmly, his eyes cold and sharp. The flames on the blade burned fiercely, turning it into a flaming sword. Devil Emperor Dugu frowned, wondering whose legacy Zhou Xuanji had obtained. He had a certain understanding of Zhou Xuanji. This brat could always take out countless treasured swords and become more and more powerful. There weren't many sword emperors in the 9 emperors of the Sword Tao who had so many swords. The Hegemon Sword Emperor and the Sky-Splitting Sword Emperor could be ruled out, as the 2 of them were not considered the cream of the crop in the upper realm. Could it be the first Sword Emperor? 9-flame Nightmare? Nameless sword. Qin Mahuai laughed disdainfully. The demonic flames on his body converged into a suit of armor, attaching to his heavy armor. Even the blade was wrapped in demonic flames. This fellow seemed disdainful, but his attitude clearly indicated that he was going all out. Shameless. Zhou Xuanji cursed in his heart, and his murderous intent grew. He was very excited. It was his first time using the god-slaying legendary sword. He hoped that it would not disappoint him. At this moment, Qin Mahuai moved. Like a ray of black light, he flew across the sky. Zhou Xuanji's eyes sharpened, and he slashed with his sword. Sky-dominating divine sword soul. Roar, the nine-flame nightmare's thunderous roar shook the entire northern wilderness region. Even Zhou Xuanji's ears were ringing from the deafening roar. Qin Mahuai, who was charging toward him, was shocked, and his eyes widened. The sword flashed in his eyes. PFFTT. He was cut in half by the sword chi. The horrifying sword chi swept across hundreds of miles in an instant, cutting all the mountains along the way in half. Even the thunderclouds in the sky were cracked. The sword chi disappeared into the horizon, and no one knew where it ended. The heavens and earth were silent. Devil Emperor Dugu, Biyao, and Feng Qiul were all dumbfounded. They looked as though they had seen a ghost. What did they see? Zhou Xuanji maintained his posture as he swung his sword, panting heavily. This slash had used up all the magic energy in his body. The instant he swung his sword, he felt dizzy, and his vision turned black. He looked at Qin Mahuai, who was cut in half. Boom! Qin Mahuai's body exploded into countless strands of black qi and dissipated. His soul did not escape and was destroyed by the slash. He died, and his Tao disappeared. Zhou Xuanji saw a valley in the ground in front of him. It was so deep that he could not see the bottom. It was hundreds of meters wide and extended to the end of the world. So domineering. His heart raced, and he was very excited. This was the god-slaying legendary sword? Killing a first revolution golden immortal with one slash. Awesome. So awesome. How can it be? Devil Emperor Dugu was stunned. He mumbled to himself and began to doubt his life. Biyao, who was far away, almost knelt down in front of Zhou Xuanji. This is a divine weapon. His face was filled with jealousy. When he thought of his own divine weapon, he felt like sh*t. Feng Qiul, on the other hand, was dispirited. He regretted it so much. On the blue ocean, two figures stood facing each other. They were Xiao Hongjun and the blue-robed scholar. Heavenly Lord Schemer, did the Divine Lord send you to do something shameful again? Xiao Hongjun said mockingly. Her eyes were filled with disdain. Heavenly Lord Schemer was the blue-robed scholar. Heavenly Lord was a position. Very few people knew Heavenly Lord Schemer's real name. Heavenly Lord Schemer waved his fan and said with a smile, "To tell you the truth, I came here to find Ji Xian and the descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline." Xiao Hongjun laughed coldly. Zhou Xuanji is a first-class great emperor. Aren't you going to rope him in? Ji Xian was also one of her targets. How could she give him up? Heavenly Lord Schemer shook his head and laughed. Zhou Xuanji has not ascended yet and is stubbornly trying to save the northern wilderness humans. He's hopeless. Why would the Divine Lord care about him? Qin Mahuai has already gone to capture him. Zhou Xuanji is most likely dead. Qin Mahuai. Xiao Hongjun frowned. She knew that this person was very powerful and had the protection of the Divine Lord. Zhou Xuanji would definitely die against him. What a pity. She was quite interested in Zhou Xuanji. Roar, the 9 flame chimera demons' roar suddenly sounded out, shocking the two of them and causing them to look in the direction of the northern wilderness region. They quickly calculated with different expressions. Xiao Hongjun was surprised, and Heavenly Lord Schemer was gloomy. Qin Mahuai was dead. Zhou Xuanji could kill him? He must have inherited Great Emperor Wuwang's legacy. Xiao Hongjuan's eyes flickered as she thought to herself. Heavenly Lord Schemer had to re-evaluate Zhou Xuanji. He suddenly remembered what the Divine Lord said to him. He looked up at Xiao Hongjun and said, "You want to find the tomb of great Emperor Wuwang, right? Let's work together. You help me find Ji Xian, and I'll help you find the tomb of great Emperor Wuwang." Xiao Hongjun asked mockingly, "Aren't you going to take revenge for Qin Mahuai?" Heavenly Lord Schemer shook his head and said, "My strength is about the same as Qin Mahuai's, and I'm only a first revolution golden immortal. Even if I go, I'll most likely be in danger. It's best to leave Zhou Xuanji to the Heavenly Hall and other factions." He changed the topic and said profoundly, "Xian Daoya has also descended to the mortal world. This person will not be able to escape death." Calm. Wonderful bookstore calm. Chapter 407. Xian Daoya? Xiao Hongjuan's eyes sparkled as he fell into deep thought. Things were getting more and more interesting. The northern wilderness region could attract the attention of so many powerful cultivators. Heavenly Lord Schemer said, "You and I should act quickly to find Ji Xian first and then great Emperor Wuwang's tomb. It's not that I have other intentions but that Ji Xian is too weak. You should understand what I mean." Xiao Hongjun nodded lightly but did not agree in his heart. "Sorry. I want Ji Xian too." Within the northern wilderness region, Zhou Xuanji landed and stored all the legendary swords into the supreme storage. Devil Emperor Dugu walked up to him with a complicated expression. "This sword should be a supreme treasure from the upper realm?" That slash was too horrifying. Zhou Xuanji did not reply and let him guess. He asked, "What's Qin Mahuai's background? What's the status of the divine cliff in the upper realm?" He felt that something was wrong. If the upper realm wanted to destroy the northern wilderness humans, why didn't they do so before but now? Devil Emperor Dugu did not hide it and said, "Qin Mahuai is Divine Lord Ji's subordinate. Ji Xian was taught by Divine Lord Ji, so he changed his surname to Ji. As for the divine cliff, its status in the upper realm is like the northern wilderness region's Dongyuan Monastery." Divine Lord Ji? Just when Zhou Xuanji was about to ask further, Devil Emperor Dugu shook his head and said, "Divine Lord Ji is a true god. I advise you not to ask too much, or else you will bring trouble upon yourself." Having heard that, Zhou Xuanji said unpleasantly, "I've already killed his subordinate. Isn't that bringing trouble upon myself?" Devil Emperor Dugu fell silent. That was true. Divine Lord Ji is proud and will not attack a junior like you. I advise you to leave the northern wilderness region immediately. Biyao Isen's voice came. He was accompanied by Feng Gyul and looked arrogant. Zhou Xuanji frowned and ignored him. He looked at Devil Emperor Dugu and asked, "Is there really no solution to this?" If there was no solution, why did Marquises descend? Devil Emperor Dugu's eyes sparkled. "Yes. Perhaps you can do it." Zhou Xuanji immediately asked for a solution. Devil Emperor Dugu told him a solution, which made him frown. This method was for Zhou Xuanji to cut off the connection between the northern wilderness region and the upper realm. At that time, the northern wilderness region would become independent and be devoured by the heavenly law. The process was slow, but it would take at least 50,000 years. This period of time was enough for Zhou Xuanji and Devil Emperor Dugu to grow again. When they grew up and connected the northern wilderness region with the upper realm, it would not be easy for anyone to annihilate the northern wilderness humans. Both of them were first-grade great sovereigns. 50,000 years was enough for them to dominate a region. Zhou Xuanji felt that it was feasible. Biyao Isen cursed out, "Are you crazy? If that happened, the northern wilderness humans would lose control. Although they were innocent, they were really in danger. Do you know why the ancestors chose this time to destroy the northern wilderness humans? Because the demonic emperor defeated the master of the divine cliff. He has proven his Tao and is truly unkillable. Soon, he will make a comeback. With his abilities, how can he not find the northern wilderness region? Devil Emperor Dugu's expression changed drastically. He knew how powerful the master of the divine cliff was. Facing that guy, he was almost scared out of his wits. Zhou Xuanji frowned and said, "The demonic emperor is the demonic emperor. Will the northern wilderness humans really be affected? Isn't this too strange?" He had never seen the demonic emperor before, so it was difficult for him to understand the upper realm's fear. The demonic emperor has descendants in other mortal realms, and all of them have transformed into demons. They are cruel and bloodthirsty, and there are even many true gods among them. Now, only the northern wilderness region is left. Biyao Yisan sighed. He had seen how powerful the demonic emperor was, and just thinking about it made him shiver. Devil Emperor Dugu said in a low voice, "There's no other way. Even if we destroy the northern wilderness humans, it will not threaten the demonic emperor. I want my descendants to live." Zhou Xuanji could not help but look at him in awe. Zhou Xuanji felt great disdain towards those human ancestors. After Lu Wuji, the humans of every generation could be called the demonic emperor's descendants. Why could they slaughter their descendants after ascending and changing their fates? It was unreasonable. Fly high into the sky and slash at the sky with all your strength. With the power you displayed just now, there's hope for you to destroy the northern wilderness region's fate. Devil Emperor Dugu said as he looked at Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji nodded and leaped up into the sky. Biyao Yisan became anxious and wanted to chase after Zhou Xuanji, but Devil Emperor Dugu pressed down on his shoulder. His expression was cold as he said, "Great Emperor Heartless, if you still have a conscience, please just stand by and watch." Biyao Yisan was so angry that he started to laugh. "You dare to threaten this emperor?" Not too far away, Feng Qiul's expression fell, and he quickly turned to run. Boom! Zhou Xuanji heard an explosion from below and instinctively looked down. He saw a powerful light shining, covering the surrounding 100 kilometers, and it was still expanding. His expression greatly fell. Wasn't this fellow too much of a dog? He self-destructed at the slightest disagreement. He immediately sped up and left the surface. The 9-flame chimera demon sword appeared in his hand. He drew on the power of the heavens and earth and began to accumulate power, preparing to unleash his most powerful strike. Soon, he came to an altitude of 50,000 meters. He could no longer see the ground, and there were many layers below. He deeply breathed in and directly unleashed the sky-dominating divine sword soul. He used all of his magic energy in this strike and did not hold back at all. Roar! The 9-flame chimera demon furiously roared, shaking the heavens and earth and causing ghosts and gods to weep. Sword chi swept out, reaching thousands of meters and seeming unstoppable. Zhou Xuanji lost all of his strength and naturally fell. He looked at his own sword chi as it continued to soar. How high was the heavens? This was the goal that everyone had been searching for. Suddenly, a ray of light appeared at the top of the pitch-black sky. Countless stars of different brightness appeared and formed a magnificent picture of the starry sky. Next, a shockwave swept toward Zhou Xuanji. He could not dodge in time and was struck head-on. He fainted instantly. This day. The northern wilderness region would never forget this day. Because this was the day when the world changed. Whoosh, seawater splashed onto Zhou Xuanji's face, and he gradually regained consciousness. He opened his eyes and saw the vertical sea surface. He blinked, and his memory began to return. At this moment, he was lying on the beach, soaking in seawater. "You are awake." A voice came from behind. His pupils contracted, and he quickly jumped up. He turned around and saw Daoya old man standing on a reef 10 steps away, enjoying the sea breeze. He heaved a sigh of relief and asked, "Why are you here?" Daoya old man said with a smile, "I came to find you." Zhou Xuanji said unpleasantly, "Why are you not at Skyfall?" "You are making me." The next second, he suddenly shut up, and his expression turned cold. "Who are you?" he asked with a deep voice. He could not see through this person. Daoya old man was only at the spirit refinement stage, but he could see through him immediately. Daoya old man stroked his long beard and said with a smile, "My name is Daoya. You can also call me Xian Daoya. I gave you everything, including your life." Xian Daoya. Zhou Xuanji frowned even more tightly. His mind worked quickly, and all kinds of guesses flashed in his mind. The Daoya old man you know is the reincarnation of one of my clones. Through him, I am able to control the situation in the northern wilderness region. You were supposed to die, but I helped him change your fate, allowing you to have a strong fate. Chapter 408. Doppelganger? Zhou Xuanji fell into silence and did not know what to say. He understood that Xian Daoya was very dangerous. Xian Daoya stared at him and continued to speak, "I gave you rebirth and fate. I even guided my doppelganger to find you and protect you. Do you still think I have enmity against you? If I wanted to kill you, you would have died 1,000 times already." Zhou Xuanji's mouth twitched. Fine, he believed him. This guy was as arrogant as Daoya old man. Xian Daoya's appearance changed suddenly. He grew taller and more muscular. His skin was not as wrinkled as before, and his hair was still white. A sense of arrogance could be seen between his brows, as though he was 20 years younger than Daoya old man. "So, why did you nurture me like this?" Zhou Xuanji asked as he regulated the magic energy in his body. Xian Daoya stroked his long beard and smiled, "To choose you as my successor, of course. The northern wilderness region is like a game of chess. Many people are playing, and the heavenly hall can only be considered second-rate. They want to destroy the northern wilderness humans, while people at my level want to choose their pawns. It is not important to me whether the northern wilderness humans are destroyed or not." What a show-off. Zhou Xuanji's scalp turned numb. Xian Daoya smiled casually and said, "You broke the northern wilderness region's heavenly law, and the heavenly law retaliated. Now, the northern wilderness region is independent, and the outside world cannot enter. Don't think about leaving either. Dugu didn't tell you that it's very difficult to reconnect the northern wilderness region with the upper realm. Even ordinary true gods can't do it." He felt a little depressed. How could this guy not be shocked? No matter how bad it was, he should at least be excited. Zhou Xuanji heaved a sigh of relief and said, "I succeeded." As for what Xian Daoya said, he had already thought of it. But he believed in himself. After tens of thousands of years, he was already more powerful than he could imagine. At least for now, the upper realm could no longer send troops to harass the northern wilderness region. Xian Daoya stared at him and felt that this guy was too arrogant. There are still many secrets in the northern wilderness region. Dig them out. Don't think that the crisis is over. "I will need you to help me later," Xian Daoya said again. Zhou Xuanji looked up at him in confusion. Xian Daoya didn't go into details and left after saying, "There is always someone better out there. Never lose your respect and don't reveal me. I can be your trump card." Zhou Xuanji frowned. This guy left just like that? He spread out his divine sense, but Xian Daoya's aura had already disappeared. He shook his head and flew inland. After 2 days, he returned to Skyfall. Along the way, he did not encounter any more soldiers from the Heavenly Palace. Ever since Zhou Xuanji shattered the sky, the Heavenly Hall's soldiers had lost contact with the Heavenly Hall. They were afraid of Zhou Xuanji, so they all hid and waited for the Heavenly Hall to send reinforcements. Zhou Xuanji also understood what had happened while he was unconscious. Everyone in the world had seen heaven-breaking sword. The entire world was bathed in a bright light, and for the time it took for half an incense stick to burn, it was impossible to see anything. After the strong light dissipated, everything returned to normal. The Heavenly Hall retreated. After the shock, the human race began to recover. The entire northern wilderness region was shrouded in sorrow. Zhou Xuanji listened to the elder's reports and glanced at Daoya Old Man occasionally. Daoya Old Man didn't care at first, but he soon realized that something was wrong. After everyone finished chatting, he quickly left. However, he was found by Zhou Xuanji. "Brat, what do you want to do?" Daoya Old Man asked cautiously. Zhou Xuanji looked at him strangely, which made him a little afraid. After living for thousands of years, he had seen all kinds of people. Did something go wrong with Zhou Xuanji's head during the battle? "Are you hiding something from me?" Zhou Xuanji asked seriously. Daoya Old Man's heart jolted. "You know that I was bragging to my disciples?" he said awkwardly. He often bragged that without him, Zhou Xuanji would not have made it this far. He did not expect Zhou Xuanji to know. Damn it! Who told on me? Zhou Xuanji was speechless. However, he could tell that this old man did not know about his identity. How pitiful. He had been fighting against fate his entire life, but he was someone else's chess piece. His fate was already determined. Zhou Xuanji sighed and left. Daoya Old Man frowned and mumbled, "This brat is just like his mother. So petty." "I was bragging, what's wrong with that?" He left while mumbling, preparing to find some disciples to play with. And now, the world finally welcomed peace. Zhou Xuanji no longer went out and began teaching his disciples to cultivate. After the battle with the Heavenly Hall, Emperor's Sword Court became more cohesive. Even the odd-job disciples were working hard on their cultivation. Zhou Xuanji focused on cultivation again. He wanted to break through to 10th Revolution Golden Immortal as soon as possible. Half a month later, Devil Emperor Dugu appeared out of nowhere and created a demonic sect in the north. Everyone was in an uproar. The invincible Great Emperor from 50,000 years ago came back to life. But the world was not worried because they had the Sword Emperor. They believed that the Sword Emperor was invincible, and even Devil Emperor Dugu could not compare to him. In the blink of an eye, half a year passed. The Heavenly Hall no longer sent people down to the mortal world. The northern wilderness region was no longer in danger. The 8 sanctums and 5 empires were still consoling the humans. The ancient demon sect created by Devil Emperor Dugu had already recruited close to 100,000 disciples. A new era had officially arrived. This day, Zhou Xuanji, who was teaching Zhou Shaoxian cultivation, disappeared on the spot with a change of expression. Halfway up the mountain, in the poplar forest, Xiao Jinghong curled up under a tree. His body was trembling, and his face was covered in sweat. "Revered teacher," he called out weakly. Zhou Xuanji appeared before him and channeled magic energy into him. The next second, Zhou Xuanji's expression changed. This was because he did not notice that Xiao Jinghong was injured. Xiao Jinghong's physical body was perfectly fine. Xiao Jinghong's lips trembled as he gritted his teeth and said, "I feel so cold, it's getting colder and colder, as if there's a block of ice in my body." Zhou Xuanji tightly frowned and took out the Holy Light Redemption Sword to heal him, but it was still useless. "He's awakening." A voice sounded out as the man in the woven rush raincoat appeared behind Zhou Xuanji. He sighed, "Now you should understand." Zhou Xuanji's brows did not relax. Under his gaze, Xiao Jinghong's eyes turned pitch black, and his pupils could not be seen. An evil energy emanated from Xiao Jinghong's body. The man in the woven rush raincoat spoke again. "He is the descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline. I hope you know what to do." Zhou Xuanji was silent. Xiao Jinghong was no longer trembling. He slowly stood up with a dazed expression. He asked in a trembling voice, "I'm the descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline?" He could feel an immense power surging within his body. It fascinated him, but it also terrified him. He had heard of the legends of the demonic emperor bloodline. Zhou Xuanji also revealed that the northern wilderness humans faced a disaster because of the demonic emperor. He had always been righteous and did not want to become an evil demon. Zhou Xuanji got up and looked at the man in the woven rush raincoat. "What will happen to him?" Xiao Jinghong was his only disciple. Their relationship was incomparable to the other sword slaves, so he would not allow Xiao Jinghong to die. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.